Chapter 1965. To be honest, when they mentioned this, they were actually a little expectant. They wanted to see if they had come up with anything new after leaving the Order void. If they could use it as a reference and gain some inspiration, the Order creations that they created in the future might come in handy. The enhanced combat method that the Heaven Mystic world used for multi-person battles seemed to be some kind of array. It was a type of array that arranged the troops into a battle formation. However, it was not the widely known type of array where the troops would charge forward in a formation. It seemed to be based on a certain position in the array, and then combined with something, to obtain some kind of enhancement. To gather power and attack together, something like that. It was said that it could gather the power of hundreds of thousands of people for an attack. It sounds a bit like a wide area enhancement array. When combined with each other, it can also gather energy to launch a powerful energy attack. Yun Nuoshing replied through the soul transmission. But, the position and whatnot, this restriction seems to be a bit excessive. It might not be the ordinary array that I thought it was. Hui whispered, I thought it was a phalanx or something like that? It should also be derived from this type of array, but it's definitely not the same. If a battle of our level really follows this kind of ordinary array formation, thousands of people and tens of thousands of people are squeezed together. Look at such a large group of people gathered together. When I send a torrent of energy over Blue Phoenix, total annihilation. Yun Nuoshing coughed dryly. Well, that's not what I wanted to say, but it's also what I meant. The array formation used for a battle of this level is definitely a combination of energy and personal strength to enhance the strength of a team. Unlike most arrays that rely on formations, this type of array actually uses other aspects of strength to enhance the strength of the team. It can be combined attack or free attack. The enhancement received in these two situations is different, but no matter what, it's fine as long as you don't break away from the array. To put it bluntly, it's a watered-down version of the enhancing type domain that we commonly use. I really don't know why we have to stand in the array like a wooden stake. It's not much different from a target. Yun Nuoshing muttered, it can't be that they haven't figured out how to make the formation exist without restricting everyone's movements, right? After everyone complained in their hearts for a while, Shu Qing finished explaining the formation to them. He turned around and looked at the group of people who were practicing while looking at the scenery. He said to Feng Ling and the others, you guys try it out first. This kind of formation is harder to control with more people. Before you officially join the 100-man level formation, you guys should familiarize yourself with the 10-man level formation. When you're familiar with it, we'll meet up and practice together. Yun Nuoshing and the others looked at each other and shrugged. They had to do it the normal way. Anyway, let's practice it first. They were still a little curious. It was not difficult for them to master this kind of new thing. After they tried this kind of formation for 2 minutes, it was announced that they could do it freely. They could change it however they wanted. Oh, we've figured it out. After Yun Nuoshing figured out the use and specialty of this thing as quickly as possible, he began to talk to everyone, purely in terms of attack and defense. It's much stronger than ordinary strengthening magic circles of the same level, but it's much weaker than the strengthening field that we use. As for mobility, you can choose to ignore this. This thing either has to stand or move together. If you want to move and attack at the same time, you have to maintain the same degree of movement. Once someone leaves the corresponding position, the power of the magic circle will decrease. Well, it's just a decrease, it's not that it can't be used anymore. However, this magic circle itself doesn't have anything like a heart connection, so it can only rely on the tacit understanding of the team. In other words, it's a fixed turret. Hui spread out his hands. Add a fixed function to it and fix the energy of everyone who enters the array. It won't change in power because of the departure of the people. It's almost like our kind of strengthening type domain. However, this should be quite difficult to do. This is considered a revision and update. That's right. That's why they have other formations to make up for their other needs. This is a fixed turret. Other formations include formations that are responsible for charging and breaking through enemy lines, as well as formations that specialize in various aspects. When all of them are combined, this is our family's comprehensive strengthening domain. Yun Nuoxing paused for a moment. She pulled her hair and said, although the order domain that we use has completely replaced the enhancing type domains that we used before, it's actually a comprehensive upgraded version. Moreover, we deliberately added the power of order. After all, we have to deal with chaos. There's a big gap between the two. In short, after understanding this so-called formation, they had a little understanding of the things that the Order Void had been tinkering with over the years. They could more or less figure out the combat power of the Heaven Mystic world. Based on this, they could also estimate the combat power of the Primordial world and the Changyuan Holy Spirit world. They were much stronger than 5 eras ago. After all, when the Order Void was watching the Celestial world for 5 eras, no one had tinkered with these things yet. Although they could already modify this formation by themselves, well, there was no need to be too eye-catching. There was no need to do these things. As for whether they had gained some inspiration, yes and no. So, do you have it or not? We glared at Feng. It's hard to say. We have gained some experience with different parts. As for whether it can be used, I'm not particularly sure. Anyway, let's see. As Yun Nuoxing spoke, he suddenly looked at Cu and smiled faintly. That's good. Cu, you can use this kind of array formation to practice. You can change it however you want. It's fine as long as it improves. Cu was still listening to the lesson. Now that she was suddenly called out, she pointed at herself with a dazed expression. Little Xiao chimed in order to create the power of a god, it's very important to practice. It's very important to get used to adjusting, modifying, and upgrading all kinds of creations. Cu opened her mouth. Her small face immediately surged with some difficulty and distress. Little star, can you lower the level? I haven't even started practicing yet. I've just started and it's already at this level. You're a mid-level peak primordial heavenly god. Do you want to start from the initial standard? Yun Nuoxing shook her head, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. She patted Cu's long hair and said, just take it slow. It's not difficult for you. When you go back, you can try it first. If you can't do it, come to me. Then, okay. After about an hour or two, the young man named Shu Qing slowly walked over. His eyes were still dark and lifeless. It seemed that his hope had been crushed, and only anger and obsession were left. Feng Ling, Hui, how is your familiarity with the array? Can we start the official practice? Oh, there's no problem here. We're very familiar with it. We can go at any time. Hui clapped his hands and turned around to say to him. Everyone nodded in agreement. Shu Qing paused expressionlessly. Yun Nuoxing felt that he seemed to want to express something but couldn't. She just said, in that case, let's try it together. If there's any problem during the practice, feel free to ask. Hey, they said it's already done. Didn't the previous newcomers struggle for at least a day before they went to the field? They came in through the route of the realm test. Can they do it or not? How should I know? Anyway, we have to go to the field to practice. This group of people are at the peak of the source. It doesn't look fake. Maybe they really have their strength. Hey, newcomers, the formation we're in charge of is only for attacking. You just have to try your best to improve your attack power. When they walked to the middle of the field, a young man, who was also wearing a ghost-faced armor but looked simpler, laughed loudly with a rough voice. I'm the vice-captain of this team. If you need anything, just call me Monitor. I've already forgotten my real name. Hui looked at the man who was about 7 feet tall and asked curiously, You've forgotten? Yes. Monitor answered and scratched his hairline dangerously. Part of my memory is vague. It seems that I've been beaten silly. I only remember that there seems to be the word Monitor in my name, so everyone kept calling it. Everyone. Shu Qing waited for them to finish talking. She waved her hand and took out a long halberd. She paused on the ground and made a mighty energy tremor sound that made everyone quiet down. Set up the formation. According to the previous arrangement, divide into 2 groups and start practicing. This time, there are newcomers in the formation. The priority is to cooperate with the newcomers in the attack and defense practice. We glanced at Feng in advance and saw that he was ready to practice seriously. His face twitched and he hurriedly said to Shu Qing, "The few of us." "Ah no, the few of them have very strong attack power. Really very strong. I'll remind you in advance. Although we may not be familiar with the array or something, you must not go easy on them. Otherwise, something may happen." Shu Qing saw that he didn't seem to be joking. She also knew that the peak of the source had their own strengths, so she took it seriously. She turned around and said to the other team led by Monitor, "Increase the power of the attack appropriately." We looked at Feng with a bitter face. "Don't mess around. Really? We have no grievances. We just met. It's not necessary." Yun Nuoxing rolled her eyes at him. I know. Then she turned her head to look at Siyu and Shuang. "Use the method I taught you. Take it as practice in advance." Hui! He felt that something bad was going to happen. Then, the 2 groups that had finished setting up the formation began to exert energy. When everyone saw that the team led by the captain immediately began to move, the speed of the energy gathering, the weight of the energy gathering, and the energy surging like a storm, everyone only had time to make a sound of surprise in their hearts. They looked at the light with dull eyes. Boom! The sudden huge commotion caused everyone in the newly built camp to turn their heads. They saw a huge mushroom cloud blooming in the distance. The powerful energy shockwave turned into a rolling gale and blew everyone's faces askew. Huey's face and body were as pale as a statue. Looking at the thick smoke in front of him, his face was swollen. His neck creaked as he turned around and looked at Feng and the others. Ning Fei and Gu Zhongming waved their hands together. "Lord Hui, you know us. Our attack power is not so exaggerated." Sui Qin quickly said, "I haven't started yet." Xiao Shi was calm. "I'm still gathering energy." Feng Qing Wang shook her head hard. "Because I'm thinking about how to cooperate, I just released a little bit of energy." Yun Nuoxing quickly shook her head. "Don't look at me. I didn't do anything. I just provided energy. I calculated the energy and attack power and didn't do anything. Otherwise, I would have blown up this place. But the situation now is also beyond my expectation." Little Angel hurried to get rid of suspicion. I'm just a support." Then only Siyu and Shuang were left there. They shrunk their necks and stuck out their tongues. Shuang couldn't help but murmur, "Seems like I used too much energy." Siyu raised her hands in surrender. I agree. Everyone, all right, we've found the culprits. These 2 are energy masters among energy masters, and they've been trained by the observer for a while. Even if they didn't use their full strength just now, they almost blasted a hole in the ground. Everyone who was listening to their conversation turned pale. Their faces couldn't stop trembling. They only had time to gather energy. Before they could turn it into an attack, the attack was already over. Look, what did I say? I said that the more beautiful a woman is, the more painful it is when she hits someone. Look at this thing. This 2-person attack is almost as powerful as the combined attack of our entire team. This attack is definitely more powerful. Hiss. How about the other half of our team? Don't worry. Yun Nuoxing saw that everyone's faces were pale and hurriedly spoke. He waved his hand to disperse the billowing smoke and dust in front of him. The other half of the team appeared from the smoke and dust. However, at this moment, all of them had already turned into statues. The barrier of their array formation had already shattered. Another layer of colorful energy barrier enveloped in front of them, blocking the destructive power just now. I saw that something was wrong and hurriedly blocked it. We're fine, but our minds might. At this point, the drill couldn't continue. When Shu Qing went to reorganize the team members, she glanced at them. There was a trace of lingering fear in her lifeless eyes. That attack of yours was really powerful. Senior held his waist as if he had been hit hard. Where did you come from? With such power, you should be quite famous in the void. With such combat power, you can lead a small team. Why did you come out from the ordinary team? Yun Nuoshing and the others smiled bitterly in their hearts. It was true that they were quite famous. If they said that they were from the front line of the void, probably everyone would know. But this couldn't be mentioned. Ahem, we just set foot on a new battlefield. We started from the beginning as rookies. It's nothing, nothing. Hui laughed dryly and waved his hand. Everyone's faces twitched when they heard this. He didn't look like a rookies at all. Just as they were about to reorganize the drill, a horn with a piercing sound suddenly rang through the entire campsite. It resounded through space. Yun Nuoshing and the others became nervous the moment the horn sounded. They almost pulled out their weapons. But after careful consideration, they realized that it wasn't the sound of the chaotic horn. They also didn't have that kind of aura. They all let out a sigh of relief. Woo, the long and heavy horn sounded one after another, shaking the entire starry sky. The last horn sounded like a response. The continuous horn made everyone's expression change slightly. They all became solemn. They reorganized themselves and adjusted their state of mind. They put on a serious expression as if they were about to set foot on the battlefield. The atmosphere immediately became extremely heavy. I don't know if we're lucky or unlucky that this happened, Shu Qing said to Feng Ling and the others with a solemn and emotionless expression. The horn has sounded 6 times. 6 armies will set off together. This is the battlefield of reciprocity. Hui subconsciously glanced at Feng Ling. The latter gave him a look that said, "Don't look at me. This isn't necessarily my fault." "Line up and prepare to set off," Shu Qing said. She then looked at Feng Ling and the others. "Put on our shoulder armor. We're going to war." Only now did Yun Nuoshing and the others notice that aside from the 2 captains, everyone else had a small, gray, ghost-like shoulder armor on their shoulders. The energy within the armor was so weak that it was useless to block attack. Its only use was probably to distinguish between friend and foe. Groups of figures had already soared into the sky from the surrounding campsites with surging energy. After they were ready, they charged off with the army as well. They advanced like an army, crossing the distance of tens of millions of light-years. 6 armies. The people here. We glanced around and saw the number of people taking part in the battle. 6 new primordial experts leading the army. There's around 1 million of them, ranging from early to peak reciprocity. In the endless starry sky, a mere 1,000,000 people were as insignificant as specks of dust. However, if the surging energy released by this group of people was included, the entire starry sky would tremble. A vast and mighty aura swept across the star field like the might of the heavens, causing the endless starlight rushing over from afar to dim. They could only cautiously flicker. At the very front were the 6 new primordial military commanders. Among them was the 8-foot-tall man who had led them here. Siyu thought that the others were as burly as him, so she could not help but turn her head to take a look. However, to her disappointment, she discovered that he was the only one who was like a small mountain. The other 5 were of normal size. 2 equally vast auras of energy suddenly came from the other side of the starry sky, vaguely condensing into the shape of a storm as they rushed over. 3 behemoths with vast auras gathered here at the same time, stopping when they were still quite a distance away from each other. Although the distance was not far, it was already within the range of each other's naked eyes. For the high-level life forms gathered here, it was actually close enough to be considered a close combat distance where they could fight in a boxing match. The 3 armies faced each other. The presences gathered here were so vast that they could shake space. Even the light of the stars would make way for them. Although I want to complain that the three camps are a little close to each other, considering. Forget it. I won't complain. Yun Nuoshing scratched her head and gave up. However, Hui continued from the side. 10 million light-years. Within the attack range, they don't take a step out. The energy torrent will saturate and bombard the area. There's no delay or gap. They will be sent away in one wave. Finally, he scratched his head. They're just bullying. Everyone sighed. They had not been humans for a long time. This time, it was refreshing to be humans. Time is tight, so there's no way to understand your strength in depth. When the battle starts, you just need to adapt. If you need to use a collective attack, there will be a command, said Shu Qing. Shu Qing said to them, our three armies will likely face the primordial world head-on. We have to be especially careful of their surprise troops. That is a team with abnormal strength. They have to respond quickly to orders to avoid unnecessary casualties. What do you mean by surprise troops? Hui asked curiously. I'm not very sure. We haven't fought the primordial world many times, so we haven't encountered them. I've only heard people talk about it. They said that they have a mysterious power and are extremely destructive. After all, they knew that the supremacy of the primordial world had survived from the previous era. There was a possibility that he was also an inheritor. It was also possible that he had some power from the previous era, such as the creation of order. Even if it wasn't necessarily related to origins, it would still have a miraculous effect on such a battlefield. Is this a three-way melee? After Hui finished looking at the situation of the two families, he turned to look at Shu Qing. It's different from the three factions I imagined. I thought that they would restrain each other. It's a little refreshing to see three groups of people fighting against each other. There aren't many three-way melees. We haven't experienced many of them in the past few years. Monitor looked at the armies of the two armies with a solemn expression. Their strength has also increased by a lot. Little Angel looked at the three sides and suddenly thought of something. She whispered in a soul transmission, we probably won't see any familiar faces. Those people from 5 eras ago, the Saint Spirit Domain and the Changyuan Domain, Little Star and Hui were very conspicuous back then. Many people remembered them. Oh, it's fine. We are all hazy and won't be recognized so easily. Furthermore, although our appearances haven't changed, our auras have changed. They probably won't be able to recognize us. In the silent starry sky, only the auras of the three sides kept surging. They kept coming into contact and then carefully retreated. This silence lasted for a while. Suddenly, an energy that shook the starry sky erupted from the other side. It was like the might of the heavens, causing the expressions of everyone from the heaven mystic world to change. However, before this energy continued to sweep out, the 8-foot-tall man also shouted. He released his primordial realm aura to counteract the other party's primordial realm aura. If you want to fight, then fight. Who do you think you are to do such despicable things? Come at me. I'm standing right here. If you can't kill me, I'll go over and slap you to death. The big man cursed. The ghost-faced armor on his body also emitted a gray and breathtaking energy light. A huge ghost-faced shadow appeared on his body. It looked quite intimidating. Haha, you are still so irritable. The voice of the primordial realm's primordial god was cold. It seems that you have gained a lot of strength. It took a lot of effort to make such ample preparations. However, it's still futile. Since you retreated in that battle, your defeat was already destined. No matter how many victories you have, it's just a waste of effort. But it's fine. Step out. After the cold voice sounded, 10 teams of 100 people walked out from the army. Their surging auras told everyone that they were eager for a hearty battle. Since you have placed your hopes on the strength that you have gathered in a hurry, I'll defeat them again today. I'll let you see what a joke reality is. Hui tugged at Shu Qing. Again, that means, Shu Qing sighed. Her indifferent expression didn't look too good. Primordial Realm wins more than they lose in a challenge before the battle. Be it against us or the Chongyuan Realm, it's the same for both sides. They sent out 10 teams, so it's naturally the same for us. If 10 teams fight one-on-one, breaking the array formation will be considered a defeat. It will even affect the team's subsequent combat strength. Refusing to fight will weaken our momentum. There are people in our 3 teams who aren't completely on our side. We have to encourage them. Therefore, the momentum before the battle is very important. We have to fight. Yun Nuoxing glanced to the side. In the distance, the teams scattered to deal with the Saint Spirit World's 2 sides, as well as the Saint Spirit World's 2 sides facing the Primordial Realm's 2 sides, were in the same situation. The chaotic battle between the 3 sides made him a little confused. He really didn't know how strange it would be when they fought. He also didn't know who would be the one fighting who. They are just a bunch of sneaky dogs. The 8-foot-tall man flicked his cloak and turned around. He shouted at the army, "Is anyone willing to fight and crush their arrogance?" Loud shouts came from the army. Every team burst out with a powerful light of energy. Soaring fighting spirit turned into wind and swept out violently. "What do you think?" Shu Qing turned to look at Hui and company. "When the army challenges, anyone who participates will be considered an ordinary military contribution. If they win, the military contribution will be even higher. However, we have rookies this time. Generally speaking, it's not appropriate for us to rashly participate in the battle. But from the looks of it, apart from Feng Ling and the girl with wings, everyone else was rubbing their palms together. He didn't know what to do from the looks of it. Yun Nuoxing noticed that there wasn't a single energy beam coming out from the rookies' formation. He guessed that the captains of the various teams had the same idea and didn't rashly apply for a battle. After all, it was a team against a team. When rookies who didn't cooperate well were mixed in, it was easy for there to be disharmony in the battle. Under normal circumstances, it would take a lot of effort for an individual to turn the situation around. Yes, under normal circumstances, it would not be appropriate for them to make a move, because if they did, they would have no sense of propriety. However, he saw that everyone was quite enthusiastic, so he sighed and said, "If you believe in us, we will definitely win. Then let's fight." Monitor suddenly became excited. An energy beam erupted from his body and soared into the sky. Everyone on his side was stunned when they saw it. Even his own team was stunned for a moment. However, thinking of the situation shown in the hasty drill just now, perhaps they could really win? Seeing this, the overseer's eyes flickered for a moment. He swept his gaze across Shu Qing's team and nodded slightly. "Then, the last team will be yours. Fight. Crush them. Fight." The roars of this group of 100 people were mixed with a violent energy storm. That aura left the overseers stunned. This aura felt a little off? They were all teams gathered from the Peak of Origin. They were basically randomly selected opponents. Soon, the 20 teams lined up in front of the formation and faced each other. Hui saw Feng's expressionless face gathering energy, and his face twitched. He whispered, "You're not going to use the excuse of calling for a fight to crush this team and part of the army behind with a torrent of energy, are you?" Yun Nuoxing was surprised. "How do you know?" "Everyone." Oh, this was the rhythm of something big. He didn't plan to do things according to the rules. However, the war itself was not a matter of rules under certain circumstances, was it? Come, let's all use our full strength. Let's use the power of the Peak of Origin to test the full strength of this formation. A torrent of energy will blast over. How many people will be injured or killed depends on how fast the heavenly god of Origin on the other side reacts. Everyone! No, isn't your full strength enough to crush a high-level heavenly god of Origin? The opponent is just an ordinary heavenly god of Origin. It can't be, can it? Of course, it's his own business if he can't block it. If he dies, it has nothing to do with me. You see, there is one less heavenly god of origin on this side. The battle is over directly, right? How happy is that? Everyone. But it will be difficult after the battle. Wouldn't it be a waste of time if they fought directly before they found anything? Chapter 1966. What they had guessed had finally become reality. Just like how the Heaven Mystic Worlds array was a new thing, the new thing used by the primordial world was, as expected, a creation of order. It was a creation of order that was of a higher level than the energy creation and law creation that commonly existed in the void of order. Looking at the situation of the void of order in this era, at least, they had never seen anyone bring out a creation of order in the void of order in the past dozen or so eras. Back then, when the myriad god world was surrounded by a quadrillion lifeforms, the strange things they brought with them were all energy creation and law creation. Currently, only the void front lines were commonly used and equipped with creation of order. Energy creation was a general term. After all, no matter if it was a law creation or an order creation, there would definitely be a huge amount of energy inside. The division between the three was very clear. Those that used energy in the simplest way were energy creations, even if they were mixed with the power of law. As for law creations, they were the first creations that used the power of law as their core. Order creations were created by adding the power of law to the foundation of law creations. It was obvious which of the three was the higher level. As for the subdivisions, there were even more. They had already talked a lot about them, but there were no signs of them finishing. There were just too many things to talk about. There were too many things to talk about, from beginner to grave, from grave to grave, from grave to grave, beginner's hands-on chapter, intermediate discussion chapter, advanced version, Genesis creation sublimation version, origin creation in human version, and so on. There were all sorts of things to talk about. The power of order was not only used in the war between order and chaos. It could even be used in a battle between order and chaos. Origin energy could also tear apart the order void. It was very easy to understand. However, using the power of order by oneself was different from giving the power of order to creations. The latter required a deeper understanding of creations. Moreover, one's understanding of energy, law, and order had to reach a certain level. In short, it was not a simple matter. If it was really that simple, the heaven mystic world would not be unable to find ordinary order creations for ordinary warriors. They did not even have energy creations or law creations, let alone order creations. The current situation was that when they saw the teams from the primordial world taking out order creations, energy creations, and law creations of all shapes and sizes, they were stunned for a moment. The others' expressions were abnormally solemn. They were not too surprised. In other words, the people from the heaven mystic world knew how the people from the primordial world fought against their enemies. They knew that the people from the primordial world had a lot of dangerous weapons in their hand. They had heavy weapons in their hand. In this case, it was normal for the primordial world to win more than they lost. Just from the preparation of both sides, the primordial world was better. It was even normal to say that they won by a few degrees. When the 10 teams from the heaven mystic world launched their attacks together, the 10 teams from the heaven mystic world only had time to react. In the blink of an eye, 3 teams had their formations broken and were defeated. There were even casualties because of this. Other than them, the other 6 teams barely managed to block the attack. The moment they blocked the attacks, they had already begun to counterattack. In an instant, energy surged. Exploding fireworks filled the starry sky between the 2 armies. The combination of order creations, energy creations, and law creations is a battle method that revolves around order creations. From the looks of it, the order creations are also being used by their own people. Yun Nuoshing said in the Soul Transmission, as expected of people from the previous era. I believe that they still have higher-level order creations in their hand. The other 6 battles could be said to be in a stalemate. It might even last for a few more minutes. Looking at the current situation, it was no surprise that the Heaven Mystic World had lost the challenge. They had already won 3 times. It seemed like they could only win 2 out of the 6 battles. Including them, it would be 3 battles. Well, if they lost, then so be it. He felt that it would not affect them in any way. You seem to have made a lot of preparations. You can actually resist for so long. The captain of the team opposite them laughed indifferently. He held a ball in his hand that was encircled by a ring of order creations that looked like a hedgehog. He was currently gathering the power of the entire team to bombard them indiscriminately. The fireworks were quite sufficient. However, the order creations contained pitifully little order creations. It was enough to deal with other people, but to them, they would not feel anything even if they just stood there and let him hit them. Nonsense, I'm the one carrying the shield, okay? Hui rolled his eyes at Maple, who was making sarcastic remarks. He looked at the chaotic battlefield and looked at Maple and the others who were fighting ridiculously. Don't you usually like to end battles quickly? You don't say anything and just use Cloud Piercer to send them into the void. Why is there no movement at all? Yun Nuashing waved his hand and used 3 to 5 arrays to throw out more than 10 energy torrents. He worked very hard to offset the energy attacks from the other side. After that, he sighed and said faintly to Hui, "Did you guys forget that you didn't let me make a move 2 minutes ago? Can't you compromise a little? I only have 2 options, full strength or pretend to be full strength. What's the compromise? Can it be eaten?" Everyone. What he meant was that they could either use hundreds of millions of arrays to drown the starry sky, or use 3 to 5 arrays to pretend to be fighting very hard. Boom. A violent energy attack came from the battle at the side. 4 out of the 6 battles had ended with 2 wins and 2 losses. They had already won 5 battles, and the primordial world's side let out a victory cheer that shook the starry sky. It was as if they had already seen their victory in advance. They only needed to win one of the remaining 3 battles to win. In their opinion, it was already very surprising that the Heaven Mystic World could win 2 battles. There would not be any more miracles. Shu Qing glanced at the other 2 battles that were still in the midst of a bitter battle, and then looked at their side's formation. The doubts in his heart had already broken through the sky. If it was in the past, their team would have been forced to the point of being flustered when facing the primordial world. But now the arrays were stable, the barriers were stable, and the energy was stable. There was even no feeling of a gap. It was as if there was an abnormal energy source supporting the entire array. There was also a hard shield that blocked all the other parties' attack. He naturally did not think that their team had suddenly become stronger. Then, there was only one answer left. Is it because of that group of newcomers? That's right. Looking at the strength that the 2 of them revealed on the drill ground, he felt that there might be 10 extremely dangerous fellows in his team. It's almost time to end the battle. Getting beaten up is not something I like to do. Suddenly, a voice came from the array formation, startling them. They turned their heads and saw that the colorful energy in Feng Ling's hand had condensed into a longbow. When he drew the bow with both hands, the entire array formation suddenly rumbled. They could feel the rapid movement of energy. The movement caused the array formation to tremble violently. It was as if cracks had appeared because it could not withstand the pressure from the energy he released. Everyone's faces stiffened when they sensed this scene. Shu Qing's expression changed. He suddenly waved his hand as if he had sensed something. He made a prompt decision and ordered, "Everyone, gather your energy and assist Feng Ling to launch a full-powered attack." The sudden increase in energy made Yun Nuashing's eyes light up slightly. "Oh, that's interesting. This array formation looks pretty good." Hui broke out in a cold sweat. "Take it easy. Pay attention. Be careful." The vast energy that had surged to the point that it could disturb the starry sky and the void stunned both sides. The energy that had reached its peak quickly converged like a vortex. The moment the light suddenly solidified, a strange feeling appeared in countless people's hearts. Go. Be buried in the void with your team. He gently released the bowstring, and the energy that had been gathered to the limit turned into an amorphous energy arrow that suddenly shot out. In an instant, it turned into a huge dark red energy torrent that was thousands of kilometers long. In the blink of an eye, it swallowed all the attacks launched by the other party. It was as if the light of destruction had descended in front of the other party. The violent energy torrent captured the frightened faces of the other party's team. In an instant, it swept across the short distance and swallowed them in one gulp. It brushed past the top of the primordial world's army. The aftermath of the extremely violent energy made countless people reveal frightened expressions. Even the three primordial heavenly gods' expressions froze. They were almost alarmed by this energy and subconsciously defended themselves. The dark red torrent only lasted for a few seconds before it suddenly disappeared, leaving behind a crack that led to the void. The figures of the other party were nowhere to be seen. Oh! Someone in the heaven mystic world suddenly let out a long cry that was mixed with cheers, causing the starry sky to tremble. The remaining people were half a beat slower and let out roars as they beat their chests and stamped their feet. Their fighting spirit soared. Even if they only won 3 rounds in the end, it was enough to make their hearts surge. Destroying the other party's team in one strike was far from something that could be compared to just destroying the other party's formation. And such a result had never been seen before in all the challenges they had faced over the years. Yun Nuashing elegantly flicked her long hair away from her ears. We are the first to strike. I said that it doesn't matter if we win or lose this challenge. Huey's body stiffened. You are really trying very hard not to kill the other party's primordial world experts in one strike. The energy torrent was forcefully raised at a 60-degree angle midway, barely sweeping past the primordial world's army. If this strike had hit the army directly, the effect would have been even greater, because they would have seen a hole appear in the other party's army. Oh, and a military governor would have evaporated on the spot. The remaining 2 battles ended in less than 10 seconds. Originally, the heaven mystic world would have lost the 2 battles, but in one of them, they managed to achieve a Pyrrhic victory. This was probably due to the sudden surge in morale. In the end, from the results of 5 wins and 6 losses, they had lost. However, the morale of the heaven mystic world's side had swelled to the peak. On the other hand, the primordial world's side was completely silent. Countless people looked at each other with dark faces, and there was actually some silence. Let's go back to the formation. Shu Qing was also a little stunned when she saw this result, but she remained expressionless on the surface. She waved her hand at everyone and returned to the formation amidst the deafening cheers of the crowd. It seems like you have really come up with something interesting this time. However, what can you do with just the strength of a team? You are still a motley crew. You have already been branded as losers before you even started. The primordial heavenly god from the primordial world waved his hand, and the surging aura of the primordial realm swept through the entire starry sky. That aura caused the primordial world's army to recover from their slightly depressed state of mind. They pulled themselves together and roared in the starry sky. At this moment, he also shouted, "There is no need to talk to them. Set up the formation. Attack. TSK, shameless ugly things. In terms of morale, you are inferior to us now." The primordial realm experts from the heaven mystic world were also shouting at the top of their lungs. The 3 primordial realm experts brought along the aura of the million-strong army to sweep through the entire battlefield. The surging energy and aura had already shaken the entire starry sky when they were released. Set up the formation. Charge. Crush them. Like floodwaters that had been opened, the 2 armies suddenly arched together and rapidly approached each other. The surging battle intent entangled like a storm, tearing at each other and spreading throughout the entire starry sky. The sudden surge of energy also drowned the entire battlefield in a short period of time. The 6 primordial heavenly gods had all rushed to a higher place the moment the battle began. Vast energy waves scattered from the distant starry sky. They were the top forces of the 2 armies. When they appeared, they needed to restrain each other with all their might. Otherwise, if they were allowed to attack the formation freely, the army would collapse in an instant. The battle between order and chaos is still the same as before. Yun Nuoshing turned her head and looked at the fireworks that were wildly expanding and exploding. Countless energy waves scattered like flowing arrows landed in various parts of the battlefield. It's a mess. No, it's not as messy as the battlefield between order and chaos. It's just that, once they are mixed together, it's impossible to tell who is fighting who. When the time comes, the underworld will throw out their own people and a bunch of fledglings and mix them into the abyssal death mist spawn. It's about the same. Hui replied. Is it that much worse? Much worse. Our normal attacks are all carrying energy towers to smash the energy torrent. We don't have that many vanguards. It's fine as long as we have enough. Look at this place, 70% of them are engaging in close combat. Say, if I use nothingness, chaos, everyone hurriedly shouted, don't smash. Don't use infinite chaos. TSK. Yun Nuoshing smacked her lips and pressed down on the elements of destruction that had just gathered. Everyone was speechless. That bastard was already gathering energy just now. They were just an insignificant member of the battlefield, drowned in the rush of hundreds of thousands of troops, feeling their own insignificance. That should be the case, but in fact, they were standing at the rear, carefully controlling their own power to unleash the energy torrent ahead so that they would not accidentally trample those little things to death. Yes, they were tyrannosauruses that had sneaked into a swarm of ants. A group of self-propelled calamities, especially that bastard who subconsciously gathered energy every few seconds and let the energy dissipate as if he was slow to react. He was a moving void annihilation. As long as he could not react in time and allowed the energy to successfully gather and explode, the battlefield would crumble. Everything would crumble. The clashing armies were recklessly unleashing their own power, with violent energy fireworks flashing incessantly. The battlefield seemed to be wrapped in some kind of barrier or domain, so it was not so easy to break through the stars, allowing everyone to fight without restraint. That being said, Maple's Cloud Piercer had already torn the void apart, but it was repaired before the battle even started. It was unknown whether this was a barrier or a domain, but it was rather stable and could be repaired rather quickly. As mentioned before, their formation was a fixed turret. They just had to stick it in one place and throw energy as if their lives depended on it. In terms of energy, it was provided by Maple, who had the largest capacity in the void. Even if these people tired themselves to death, they would not be able to exhaust Maple's energy. They would probably find it strange that they were so brave today. As for him, well, his job was to be a shield. He just had to stay where he was and block the stray arrows on the other side for the turrets. If he could, he would also block the fatal attacks for the other teams that were temporarily considered his allies. Perhaps it was because Maple had shown his skills when he challenged them, but the energy blasts thrown at them were obviously much more than those thrown at other places. If it were not for the fact that they were in a chaotic battle, these hundreds of thousands of people would have rushed towards them and focused fire on them first. Then, Maple would have a legitimate reason to use the 3 forms of nothingness. Maple pulled his bow and hummed a song as he casually shot out energy arrows. Every time he pulled his bow, 22-foot-long formations would appear beside him. Then, energy arrows would be shot out along with the energy longbow. They were silent and as fast as lightning. They pierced through the energy barriers of countless people in the primordial world. Usually, every energy arrow was an opportunity to defeat them because every energy arrow had an extremely strong penetrating power. Because they had repeatedly warned Maple, They did not bring along boundless energy and only used penetrating power to attack. Every energy arrow would accurately pierce through or penetrate an energy barrier. If they could seize this opportunity, they could easily cause the primordial world's defense to fail in a large area, followed by a round of rapid casualties. In fact, the people in the heaven mystic world were not to be trifled with. As the phenomenon of their enemies' energy barriers being penetrated for no reason increased, they gradually reacted. Seeing that more and more people in the primordial world were flustered because of the cracks in their barriers, they temporarily did not care about the reason. They only cared about catching those who suddenly had their barriers cracked and rushing over to give them a good beating. They also gathered the power of the formations to release energy torrents, killing a large number of people in one go. After a few rounds of charging like this, the situation became very chaotic. The situation was almost one-sided. Both sides still did not understand what was going on with the strange cracks in their barriers. As for Cu and Shuang, who had been personally taught by Maple, well, they were now practicing with all their might. The 1,000-mile-wide and 10,000-mile-wide energy balls that exploded for no reason on the battlefield were their masterpieces. The two of them occupied 60% of the energy explosions on the battlefield. Blue Phoenix was also working hard to brandish the Netherworld Ruin Sword, using energy sword beams to attack from a distance. From what he could see, she was just short of shouting, "Netherworld Firmament / to clear a third of the battlefield to show her power. Speaking of which, if she were to use the Netherworld Ruin Sword to attack from a distance, wouldn't she still be an energy cannon? Forget it, I don't care. After all, I can't leave the formation now. Attack with all your strength. Shu Qing waved her hand and gathered the power of the entire formation. The halberd in her hand swung forward with all her strength, creating a 1,000-mile-wide energy crescent. The group of people from the primordial world in the distance were all sent flying. 5 or 6 teams' formations were shattered. The people who were frozen by the energy crescent were surrounded and wiped out by the people from the heaven mystic world. Their attacks have weakened. A team leader in the same row of fixed artillery emplacements shouted. He waved his hand and said, "Everyone, advance forward." Shu Qing turned her head and looked at everyone. "Advance. Temporarily stop attacking and maintain the defense. Attack again after moving quickly." "Oh!" everyone responded. Yun Nuoshing casually waved her hand and threw out the chains of order to tie herself, Blue Phoenix, and Shuang together at a constant distance. Then, she continued to draw her bow with a relaxed look. Huey's face twitched a few times when he saw this. Was she treating this as a relaxing entertainment? After the group of people in the fixed formation moved into position, Yun Nuoshing suddenly stopped drawing her bow. She turned her head and shouted at Blue Phoenix, "Girl, / directly behind you. Use more strength." These words were said directly, causing everyone to be stunned. Then, they heard a faint "oh" in response. They hurriedly turned their heads and shouted. Netherworld Ruins, Firmament / A purplish-black energy sword beam that was 50,000 kilometers wide drew a perfect crescent, tearing the empty starry sky into pieces. A deep purple sea of fire suddenly exploded from the sword beam, covering tens of thousands of kilometers in front of them. In this vast energy torrent, surging energy auras suddenly erupted. They were the dozen or so teams hidden in the starry sky. They had just gotten into position, but before they could do anything, they were pulled out by a powerful energy attack. People from the primordial world. Shu Qing and the other team leaders were shocked when they saw this situation. At this moment, the people from the primordial world who came to attack were all immersed in the deep purple energy sea of fire, struggling futilely. They saw their energy barriers rapidly melting and saw the devouring flames igniting themselves. They knew that they would also melt in this sea of fire. They gave up their final struggle and roared as they sent out a final energy attack towards the people from the heaven mystic world. The all-out attack unleashed by over 1,000 heavenly gods of origin was extraordinarily powerful. Shu Qing and the others all wore grave expressions as they turned around to defend themselves. However, just as they were about to turn around and defend themselves, they were greeted by the sight of a massive, dark purple wall of flames soaring into the sky. The wall of flames obscured their line of sight and drowned out the oncoming wave of energy. By the time the flames dissipated, the sea of flames had already disappeared without a trace. Everyone in the cannon turret formation froze in place as they looked at the woman in the red and black dress with horror in their eyes. They couldn't help but shudder. Yun Nuoxing did not turn her head from beginning to end. At this moment, she was humming a song and swaying her body. Her drawing of her bow did not slow down at all. At the same time, she muttered to herself in the starry sky, "Although pouring energy at the front is quite fun, you have to watch the back. They succeeded just now. This team's strength will drop by at least 70%. The group of people had awkward expressions. Primordial World, reorganize the team. Retreat. A mighty and oppressive roar came down from above the starry sky. In the chaotic battlefield, everyone from the primordial world, who had been torn into hundreds of positions and were fighting for themselves, used all their strength to repel their opponents. Without another word, they quickly retreated and slowly gathered into a group at the rear. Stop the pursuit. Prepare to retreat. The 8-foot-tall man from the heaven mystic world also shouted at the top of his lungs. The warriors from the heaven mystic world, who were about to take advantage of the victory, could only give up on attacking. They turned to erect an energy barrier and retreated towards the primordial world to prevent any sneak attack. They began to gather bit by bit. Want to run? The red and black bow in Yun Nuoxing's hand began to emit a faint 5-colored energy. 2 azure array formations that were hundreds of thousands of feet in size instantly formed beside her. The 3 points of energy gathered like a storm. The sudden huge commotion caused everyone in the heaven mystic world to be stunned. His colorful eyes stared intently at the layers of barriers formed by the primordial world. He casually glanced at the 6 primordial heavenly gods who were preparing to retreat. The energy condensation was completed in an instant. Then, he easily drew the bow in his hand. Cloud-piercing. Dozens of energy rings suddenly exploded. 3 mighty energy torrents that were only hundreds of thousands of feet in size passed through the starry sky battlefield in an instant. Under everyone's shocked gazes, they collided with the primordial world's large energy barrier. Countless ripples appeared on the barrier in an instant. Cracks quickly spread. The speed was so fast that all the people from the primordial world who were holding up the barrier widened their eyes in horror. Just as they were about to strengthen the energy barrier to stabilize it, they saw a large piece of the barrier suddenly collapse. It's over. Countless primordial world warriors held their breaths. They subconsciously used all their strength to condense their team's energy barrier, and then hurriedly retreated. Bam! The sound of the entire large barrier suddenly collapsing resounded through the starry sky. The 3 red-black energy torrents rushed into the array with endless destructive power, swallowing hundreds of teams in an instant. Even if they just brushed past them, the energy barriers suddenly collapsed into pieces. Figures were either attracted by the light of energy or thrown into the void or the depths of the starry sky by the explosion of energy and the storm caused by the shattered barriers. The primordial world team that had just integrated was instantly thrown into chaos. Tisk, do you think you can escape? Yun Nuoxing's eyes shone brightly. He subconsciously took out the rhythm of light and rushed forward, ready to take advantage of the situation. Just as he exerted force with his feet, Siyu and Qing Huang rushed over and held him down. The 2 women hurriedly shouted in his ear, "Little star!" Yun Nuoxing hurriedly regained his senses and saw countless people staring at him in a daze. He hurriedly withdrew the rhythm of light and dispersed the energy. He put on a stiff expression and pretended that he didn't know anything. You didn't see anything just now. Everyone, what the hell? We didn't see anything. The 3 cloud-piercing arrows directly collapsed the primordial world's combined barrier and killed more than 1/3 of their numbers. How could they say that they didn't see anything? Should they change their minds? The violent energy confrontation in the starry sky had already stopped. The 6 primordial heavenly gods who had stopped fighting returned to their respective arrays. They were all stunned when they saw the primordial world team that had collapsed. What an interesting fellow! The primordial heavenly god from the primordial world's cold voice sounded again. At this time, anyone could hear the anger in his voice. That pair of eyes that contained the might of the primordial heavenly god landed on the heaven mystic world's army and accurately on Yun Nuashing. He stared at him for a while before shifting his cold gaze away. Primordial world, retreat. You dare to stare at me? You're tired of living. Yun Nuashing cursed as he took out the rhythm of light again. He suppressed his strength and pretended to be very relaxed. In fact, he had been suppressing his strength to the point that it was very difficult for him to hold on. In short, the pressure was huge. Otherwise, he wouldn't have almost charged subconsciously at the end. Now that he was glared at by this guy, his violent temper was immediately suppressed by the little angel. He helplessly covered his forehead and sighed. He muttered in the soul transmission, "This guy has been lying down for 20 years and still hasn't recovered from his war fever." Everyone nodded vigorously. They had all calmed down and could slightly suppress themselves. Only a certain observer. Forget it. After all, he relied on his full strength to survive. It was indeed very uncomfortable for him to suppress and restrain himself. However, there was no need to use his full strength to fight these small things. Didn't Origin I Primordial Chaos feel that it was a waste of energy to kill flies? Chapter 1967. According to the news that Hui and the others had heard, the gathering of the 3 parties would eventually evolve into a chaotic battle. It was the planned situation of who the F***CK is fighting who. In the end, the battle between the primordial world and the heaven mystic world ended prematurely. Originally, the 3 parties would gather for a battle and fight for at least 4 to 5 hours. At most, it would take 2 to 3 days. This time, the battle ended in less than 2 hours. The primordial world could be said to have suffered a crushing defeat and left, causing the other 2 battlefields to end hastily. As for the results, they only heard the same evaluation. It seemed that other than the battlefield they were on, none of the other 2 battlefields gained any advantage. It was also possible that they were forced to rein in their horses before the fight became too violent. In short, a battle that was supposed to be very tragic ended abruptly. After the battle, it felt like only the primordial world had suffered a great loss and had no choice but to flee. Both the Chanyuan Saint Spirit world and the Heaven Mystic world were dumbfounded. Yes, the people from the Heaven Mystic world who went to deal with the Chanyuan Saint Spirit world were dumbfounded because the battle ended too quickly. They didn't suffer any losses at all. They guessed that the Chanyuan Saint Spirit world was also very confused about how to deal with the primordial world. The primordial world retreated from the battlefield, but it didn't mean that the Heaven Mystic world could continue to fight with the Chanyuan Saint world. When they were almost done, the primordial world would definitely come back and clear the battlefield. Therefore, when the 3 parties gathered and one party retreated, the other 2 parties would have to retreat as well. Unless one party had an overwhelming advantage and could withstand the attacks of the other 2 parties, who were forced to join forces at the worst moment. Obviously, none of the 3 parties could do it. Therefore, they had to retreat obediently. The Heaven Mystic world's army only relaxed after retreating to the big floating island in the camp. They dispersed. The 6 primordial gods gathered in the largest temple to discuss the battle situation. As for the others, well, they didn't know what to do for a while. They said they wanted to rest. It was true that they should rest after a battle, but it didn't seem as tiring as they imagined. There weren't many casualties and they could quickly recover. However, if they wanted to continue practicing, they had to rest for a while after a battle. Even if they weren't exhausted, they were still mentally exhausted. Thank you for your hard work in this battle. Shu Qing looked at Feng Ling and the others and said, "It's all thanks to Feng Ling's reminder this time. Otherwise, those 16 teams would have definitely caused great damage to our rear." At that time, the entire battlefield would have been in an extremely passive state. Exterminating an entire team before the battle, and those 3 cloud-piercing arrows at the end. TSK, TSK, TSK. So far, we have never seen anyone so ferocious. They directly smashed through the primordial world's combined barrier, and killed a considerable number of enemies. Monitor couldn't help but clap his hands excitedly and say, "This time, primordial world suffered heavy casualties. Your battle contributions will be recorded by the artifacts in that domain. In 2 days, it will be converted into military contributions and distributed to everyone. So, there's no need to rush. But I'm still very curious. Where did you guys come from?" As Monitor spoke, he patted his forehead and said, "TSK, I was just casually mentioning it. Don't ask where you come from on the battlefield. There's no need to take it seriously, and there's no need to answer. Everyone, disperse and rest. We just finished a 3-way battle. It should have been a 3-way battle. It should have been a 3-way battle. It should be quieter in the near future. You can focus on your cultivation. If necessary, we will gather everyone for a drill. You can also go to Mystic Heaven Sacred City and other nodes to take a look. There aren't many restrictions." After everyone dispersed, only Shu Qing and Monitor were left on the drill ground. They waved their hands and sealed the space around them. They looked at each other and the latter said, "Amazing guys. At least, they are definitely not ignorant newbies." They didn't feel surprised from the beginning. They didn't even need to adapt to this kind of battlefield. What do you think? They are powerful and unstoppable. Shu Qing's gaze locked in the direction where Feng Ling and the others had left. None of the 10 people used their full strength. "I'm sure." "Oh, then, what do you say?" "It's too early to report it after observing for a while. However, the Overseer will notice it. Maybe we don't need to report it. After all, it's almost time. With such a powerful person, the Overseer and the Realm Master shouldn't miss it. Okay, then I'll leave first. I'll go shopping in Mystic Heaven Sacred City." Shu Qing, seeing Monitor end the conversation in a second and disappear in the next second, he let out a sigh of relief helplessly. In the hall of the tallest temple, the open windows on all sides welcomed the starlight into the hall. From the height of tens of thousands of feet, one could see the distant starry sky and the huge barrier of the other 2 families that were confronting them. From the other side, one could also look down and see the many densely packed camps that were only the size of rice grains and the other temples that were obviously much shorter. In the huge hall, there was a long round table and a set of more than a dozen casually pulled out chairs. Other than that, there was nothing else. The curtains and windows were a set, so it didn't matter. At this moment, there were 13 people sitting on the chairs, staring intently at the image of the battlefield projected by a black cube that was about 1 foot long and wide on the table. The switching speed of the images was very fast. After one round, it only slowed down in a few places. Someone called for a battle and wiped out a small team. At the same time, it also recorded his cool and elegant movements after the battle. Then, it was followed by a scene of a small phoenix cleaving an area of tens of thousands of miles with a single slash. There was also a scene of a person shooting 3 cloud-piercing arrows to cripple half of the Yuanshu world's army. There was also a scene of him humming a song and drawing his bow to create weaknesses in the barrier of the people of the Yuanshu world, so that others could rush in and break the defense. After the image ended, the energy of the cube dissipated and returned to silence. Even the hall was silent. What do you think? The 8-foot-tall man crossed his arms. His burly figure seemed to have become even bigger after taking off his armor. He looked around and looked at the other 12 people. Seeing that they were all silent, he patted the table and said, "Hey, don't be silent. I didn't ask you to come here to watch the show. Come on, you two are with us. What do you want to say? What do you want to say? What do you want to say? What do you want us to say?" One of the other 2 Yuanshi gods on the same battlefield rolled his eyes at him and said, "Do you want us to say that this is a problem with the peak of origin, or do you want us to say that this is not a peak of origin at all? Or do you want us to suspect what he is here for? There are traces of failure in breaking through to the Yuanshi realm on his body." The other person crossed his fingers and clenched them a few times. He frowned and said, "If we want to analyze his purpose, perhaps he is here to get the method to break through to the Yuanshi realm. This is also the purpose of most people joining the battle. Other than him, the others seem to be quite powerful. It is almost a team, and no, almost 10 people who have tipped the balance of the battlefield. Can you find any other information? How can we find any? There are so many worlds in the upper plane. The void eliminates stagnant things so quickly. How can we find any traces? Putting that aside, he and his companions are very powerful. You only noticed that his and the others' attacks are very powerful, but you did not notice the sturdiness of the formation of Shu Qing's team. Judging from the situation of his team in the past battles, they did not have such a strong defense. Someone with special defense must have entered the formation. Throughout the entire battle, their formation did not even shake a little. They are indeed powerful, but this is a group of newbies. This kind of nature is really unsettling. Do you think they could have been sent by the other 2 teams? Oh, that's **t. If they were from the other 2 teams, they would have cleared the battlefield a long time ago. Look at their combat prowess. If I had them in my team, I would have dragged them out to challenge me every day. After a dozen or so rounds of battle, they would have exhausted all the heavenly origin gods of either team. Or perhaps both teams would have been exhausted. Everyone was silent. This was quite reasonable. This was the trump card of trump cards. There was no reason for them not to use it until now. Unless the other side's brain was damaged. Even if they wanted to think of a chess piece for that purpose, they could not find any reason to convince themselves. If it was for that purpose, there was no need to reveal it now. They could just keep hiding it. Yes, they could not find any reason at all. In the end, it is as good as not saying anything. The 8-foot man rolled his eyes and turned to the figure by the window with his hands clasped behind his back. "Boss, what do you think?" The other 12 primeval gods on the table also turned to look at the figure by the window. They were all curious as to what their boss thought. The figure by the window put down her hand and turned around to look at them. It was a tall girl wearing a wide white cloak. She was wearing a silver-white light armor decorated with exquisite patterns. Her long black hair cascaded down her back without any restraints, and she wore an exquisite silver headband that seemed to be made of energy. Her eyes were dark and deep, as if she was staring at a clear spring or the endless void. Although they were sparkling and clear, they were too deep, and one could faintly feel a bit of a ferocious aura from them. If one only looked at her front, one would think that she was a majestic general, but when one looked at her eyes, they suddenly felt that it was not incomprehensible that the warlords and soldiers under her command all wore ghost-faced armor. Although their boss was very beautiful, her eyes, well, it was not that he wanted to say it, but it was true that anyone who saw her eyes would feel their heart skip a beat and avoid them. Even if they were used to it, they still could not help but put on a walnut-like face if they met her eyes for a long time. Their boss, who was usually straightforward and did not hesitate when facing an army, could not help but frown at this time. Her eyelids drooped slightly, and her slender eyelashes trembled slightly. She seemed to be lost in thought and was a little uncertain. "There is still time. Let's observe first and list it as a backup. Okay. The 8-foot man scratched his head. The others also breathed a sigh of relief in their hearts. They all nodded without objection and slowly got up to leave the hall. In the camp, in the hall of a small 2-story pavilion where they settled down, Yun Nuoxing and the other 8 people, Gu Zhongming and Ning Fei, who could not sit still and wandered around the camp, casually sat down in the hall. They all subconsciously threw out energy barriers to shield the place. They looked at each other and sighed. Feng, did you find anything? Hui turned his back and threw himself on the sofa and asked lazily. For the time being, I'll borrow the energy left on the battlefield and let it spread out naturally, soaking into the void. But there's not much energy left, and it's not enough to convert it into origin energy. That's why it's spreading out very slowly, and the remaining energy won't last long either, unable to cover this entire region of the void. Yun Nuoxing's eyes flashed with a real colorful luster. She shook her head and said, So far, I haven't found anything worthy of attention. Shuang, what about you? Shuang also shook her head a little gloomily and said, I have already begun to think about the comet that you mentioned, everyone. She must have been driven crazy by that convulsive finger. Well, Yun Nuoxing raised his hand with a trembling hand. Everyone turned around and saw that his face did not look too good. Their faces twitched. I feel very wronged now. Very wronged. I can't hold it in anymore. Let's fight. You have to use the strength of a chopping hand to prevent accidentally exploding the entire void. Let's explore the surroundings. You have to use all your strength to choke your own neck to avoid making too much noise and being seen by others. I can feel that the pressure level is constantly rising. He took a deep breath and his eyes lost their glow. It's too hard for me. Do you have to hold it in so much pain? War fever syndrome? Huey's face twitched. Looking at Feng's squirming and uncomfortable appearance, it seemed that he could already feel the pressure. No. Yun Nuoxing sighed deeply. Do you still remember that before I left, I had already started to increase my strength? Everyone's heart skipped a beat. They saw him pointing at himself helplessly. The rules of the structure, the source of the structure, and the energy of the origin. The three are working together in harmony. In addition, the essence of the origin is brushing away the fog bit by bit. Right now, it's equivalent to me suddenly being told that I'm building infrastructure. I don't have enough materials. I can't even find a piece of wood. At this stage, I need to let the energy surge violently. In the end, whether it's fighting or looking for things, I have to do my best to suppress it so that there's only a little movement when it's surging. Then, I have to be very careful not to let the origin energy surge too violently and go out of control. Now, I'm out of breath. No, I'm not speeding it up. I just need to let the energy surge while doing this. Right now, I'm forcefully holding it back is equivalent to suppressing the movement of a volcano. It wants to erupt but can't erupt too violently. It can only erupt a little bit. Yun Nuoxing said as he slid down the sofa. His entire body was limp and weak. I don't think I can do it. That would really make people irritable. Before I came out, I thought that I could hold it in, or that I would be able to do things more quickly. I thought that it shouldn't be a big problem. Yun Nuoxing rolled his eyes and almost vomited out his soul. I didn't expect it to be so difficult. I can't hold it in. I really want to blow something up. I really want to cause trouble. I have a way. Xiao Shi suddenly spoke. Yun Nuoxing was stunned for a moment. He subconsciously sat up and looked at her with hopeful eyes. Xiao Shi slowly said, It's not to suppress or control. It's just to cover up. It can completely cover up your energy movement. As she spoke, she stood up and walked to his side. Seeing this, Little Angel nudged Siyu to make room for Xiao Shi to sit next to Little Star. Xiao Shi continued, It's originally used to cover up all the aura of the body during battle. It will continue to consume a certain amount of energy. It's also done by using the origin energy to complete the cover-up. At that time, you don't have to worry about the surging energy in your body affecting anywhere else. No one will be able to sense your aura. Xiao Shi looked at his colorful eyes and paused for a moment. She then said, Senior, Peak Yuanshi, chaos conceptual bodies, and venerable gods are excluded. That's a very serious answer. Yun Nuoxing smiled bitterly and shook his head. Let's just go to the Order Void for a while. We won't encounter these guys. Come on. He shrugged. What should I do? Do I have to cooperate? Just act normally. Don't resist. She raised her hand, and a purplish gold pattern appeared on her jade hand. The origin energy surged, and she raised her gray eyes that were tinged with purplish gold to look at him. When she saw him nod, she reached out her hand and pressed it on his chest, pressing it in forcefully. Yun Nuoxing's face twitched. Half of her arm disappeared into his chest. She was pressing into his soul. But seeing how focused she was, he didn't care. She was probably using the origin energy and her own characteristics to do something. Well, it was an arrangement to cover up. He could sense the activity of the origin energy. Hui looked at Xiao Shi's action of pushing her arm into his chest and couldn't help but whisper, digging out your heart with a claw. That's called grabbing your heart. Everyone was speechless. This obviously didn't mean to dig out the heart physically. Besides, energy lifeforms didn't have such a thing. After about 2 minutes, the origin energy and the aura of the magic circle on Xiao Shi's body slowly subsided. She took her hand out of his chest and nodded at him. It's done. You can try. Yun Nuoxing looked down at his chest. There was an additional purple and gold pattern there. It was a bit like a three-dimensional pattern drawn by a magic circle. With it as the starting point, many purple and gold energy lines spread towards his soul and spread to every corner. He could feel that a little bit of energy was automatically absorbed by these energy lines, which in turn used to cover up the energy released by his body. It was a very weak energy, and the rate of recovery by taking a breath was many times more than the rate of consumption. He tried to slowly release the suppression on his own energy. He released about a third of it. Then he looked up at everyone. How is it? Everyone carefully sensed for a while and shook their heads. Hui went over and stared at him with his eyes wide open. How much did you release the suppression? 1/3. Hui reached out and poked his head. There's really no movement. Why don't you release all the suppression and see? Wait. Okay, I've completely released it. Yun Nuoxing slowly breathed a sigh of relief. The word refreshed was written all over his face. He looked as if the pressure on him had suddenly dropped and swept away the accumulated haze on his head. I feel much better. No problem. Xiao Shi also checked him and nodded. The energy mark is left there. It can be destroyed at any time. Although the consumption may be very small for you, it is still a small part of the energy. If you encounter a situation where you need to use all your strength, it may cause problems. So, I left you a mark that can be easily destroyed. Oh, thank you. Yun Nuoxing chuckled at her. Although he still could not avoid using too much energy when using energy in other people's territory, at least he did not have to suffocate himself to death. Back to the original topic. With the help of the remnant energy on the battlefield, he searched the starry sky and the void region. However, he still found nothing. Shuang was also working very hard to sense, but looking at her walking in circles while trying to sense, he knew that this girl was also confused by her own senses. Okay, I followed Siyu's words and looked around. Yun Nuoxing pressed down on Shuang, who was almost dizzy, and pulled her to sit beside him. I didn't see anything at the limit of the energy ripples. That thing is either going in circles further away, or there is some kind of interference that can't detect its existence. For the time being, this was a kind of abnormal phenomenon. The abnormality here meant that there was a connection. As for what kind of connection it was, he did not know for the time being. Anyway, there was a connection. Even if he used this place as the center and pointed at a random radius of the void and dug through the void, he would still be able to find something if he dug into the void region. There was no surveillance at the origin region. He could slowly explore it at a slow speed without returning to the origin region. There was also no surveillance at the origin region. That would be left for the origin region to deal with later. What was left was this world of light and this void region that was being closely monitored by the three parties. They had placed people inside and outside, waiting to see when they could dig something out. Along the way, he also reported to Yuanji that he was safe. He learned that the front line of the void was safe and sound. At the same time, he also learned that everyone was still intensely discussing how to improve the 20 ways to kill his phantom. From this aspect, everyone was still very energetic. He heard that they had already gathered half of the front line of the void and were preparing to kill his phantom. Gu Zhongming and Ning Fei walked around the camp, but did not find anything that could be considered information or clues. They slipped back with a gloomy face. I heard the captains of the various teams discussing the situation of the battle just now. We seem to have been noticed by the people above. Ning Fei said, a little worried. I'm afraid there will be trouble. Gu Zhongming shrugged. There's nothing we can do about being noticed. It's fine as long as they don't do anything bad. If they do, we won't just sit there and do nothing. However, it will be difficult for us to find what we are looking for. Right now, the only clue we have is to connect the three clans on this battlefield through something that might be related to this void area or this space. Without a target, we will have come here in vain. Yes, so let's hope they don't do anything bad. Gu Zhongming tilted his head back and pulled his seesaw ponytail. It's not time to punish them yet. Let's hope they can behave before we finish our business. At the same time, I Ching and the 1,000 order warriors that he brought with him also said that they did not find anything. The progress of the matter was stuck at the level of the comet spins and spins that CU had discussed. They did not even have a way to verify it. After the battle, the three battlefields also quieted down. Yun Nuoxing used the energy aftermath of the entire battlefield until it was exhausted. He expanded the search area by more than 10 times, but still did not find anything. This was not good news, speaking from experience. After all, he and Hui had come out together. With their ability to encounter trouble, if the trouble did not end quickly, then it must be brewing. Brewing meant that the storm has begun to gather, right? Huey's face twitched. It's gathering, 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 accumulating destructive power until it's big enough to attract our attention. Then, everything will fall on our heads like a swarm of bees. This statement made everyone a little scared. What scared them even more was that CU added, the last time we encountered something of this level, it was in AI Hongyun's void territory. See, when he said that, everyone broke out in cold sweat. Translation: this could be a big trouble, something so big that it could make the entire void tremble. And this time, it was not in the remote void territory. It was near the center of the upper plane, where countless lives were gathered. If a disaster of 2 levels were to erupt here, it was almost like throwing a star into a star with 100 billion lives. It could easily lead to total annihilation. Although he was a little resentful of the Order Void, he felt that he could not laugh at such a joke. Is there no other way? In the sacred city of profound heaven, Yun Nuoxing and the others were casually strolling in the starry city. Hui said this with a heavy sigh, which made him ponder. Actually, there is a way. What is it? Everyone perked up. Let little Qing Zi throw a large boom across the void to attract everyone's attention. I will take advantage of the chaos to spy on the entire void territory and scour it clean. By then, even if we can't find anything, it will have nothing to do with us. Yun Nuoxing held a small toy on the stall and looked at it. But there is a small problem. What if the thing that may be related to the clue is fragile or easily alarmed? If this large boom is thrown, we thought for a moment. Forget it. Let's look for other clues. Yun Nuoshing shrugged. After all, it was a desperate method, and it was easy for some unpredictable changes to occur. Well, he was in a normal state now, and he was not anxious. He did not spend too much time, so he was still patient. While they were strolling, there was a sudden commotion on the crowded street. Soon, it spread from the back to where they were, causing them to turn their eyes. As if they had a telepathic connection, they walked in that direction. Chapter 1968. Suddenly, there was a commotion at the end of the street. The noise that echoed in the street was mixed with the content of a normal conversation. However, when these words were captured in one's mind, one would not be able to tell what was going on. They could only vaguely hear that someone was coming. The people on the street were a little frightened and wanted to leave the place. It was as if a big shot was coming out, and the unrelated people were hurriedly trying to reduce their presence and run as far as they could. Noise and chaos. The noise on the street rapidly decreased in the midst of the chaos. Yes, the people who were shouting and talking at the top of their lungs were whispering at the top of their lungs. Before they could reach the source of the chaos, they were already pushed to the side of the road by the people who were retreating to the sides or hurriedly leaving the place. The hawkers who set up the stalls had already packed up their things when the chaos abruptly broke out. Then, they jumped over the wall, climbed up the eaves, and dug holes on the spot. Compared to the others, their movements were the loudest. After all, when there was an incident on the street, the hawkers were the unluckiest. When a fight broke out, no matter what was on the stall, it would become a weapon to be thrown. Pushed to the side of the road by the crowd, Yun Nuoshing and the others craned their necks curiously to look at the direction of the street. In the middle of the street, they saw the source of the chaos. It was a ball of light in the shape of a person. It only had the shape of a person. There was an awl on the face, and no facial features could be seen. Even the clothes on the body seemed to be covered by the light. Just from the appearance of the outline, the small face, long hair, and clothes were all connected together. It should be a female, right? It was hard to say. They could not tell. See, you whispered, I see it. Although the clothes are blocking, there is indeed a front armor. It's a woman. Yun Nuoshing's face twitched. He decided not to answer the girl. At this moment, he was actually more shocked than the others. He was even a little surprised. He was very familiar with the appearance of the white light figure. There were 146 such white light figures in the shattered continent of origin. So when he saw it, his heart skipped a beat. He almost jumped up and did a backflip on the spot and set up hundreds of thousands of magic circles to protect himself. But when he did not feel the presence of origin from it, he suppressed his overreaction. The white silhouette's feet did not touch the ground and did not make a sound. It floated forward like a wandering soul. When it walked over, it involuntarily emitted a strange and tranquil aura. Everyone who retreated to the side of the road looked at the white silhouette with fear and confusion. The closer it was to the white silhouette, the quieter it became. A group of higher life forms were suppressed into silence by the white silhouette. It was not known whether it was because of the tranquil aura that they forcibly quieted down or because they were simply frightened into silence. It was not until the white silhouette left and walked a distance that they slowly recovered their voices. Their faces were still filled with uncertainty and fear. It did not do anything else along the way. Nothing happened as it walked. When it reached the end of the long street, it suddenly trembled twice and dissipated like a cloud of smoke under the gaze of countless people. After it disappeared, the strange state of alert on the long street also disappeared. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief, and then immediately threw what had just happened to the back of their minds and returned to their normal actions. The words that had been scattered began to ring again, interspersed with some discussions about what had just happened. Looking at their calm and habitual appearance, Yun Nuoshing could be sure that the people here were already used to being scared. Hui talked to a passerby for a while and understood something. He turned to Maple and the others and said, "I just asked around. It should be related to that shadow. Probably at the beginning of this era, the shadow has existed here." Yun Nuoshing raised his eyebrows and interrupted him. "Is it here or in the void? I'm not sure. The person I asked just now was also ambiguous and couldn't give me a definite answer." Hui scratched his head. Seeing that Maple didn't continue to ask, he continued the topic. "Then, after it came out, it tore down half of Profound Heaven's sacred city. To be specific, it tore down half of Profound Heaven's sacred city because of a counterattack. Probably someone launched an attack on it or something. If you don't touch it, it won't have any reaction. Just like before, it's like a wandering ghost. The specific range of its wandering is not only Profound Heaven's sacred city. I heard that it also appeared in the territories of the other two families. The location of its wandering is not fixed." Hui said with his hands behind his head and sighed. "This matter is like a ghost story. It's confusing and we can't figure out the reason. There are so many guesses. Let's not talk about that part. It's useless to talk about it. After all, no one has communicated with it." Communicated? Yun Nuoshing suddenly froze. She pinched her hair and pondered for a while. She muttered to herself, communicated? So that's how it is. That's its voice. Voice? Hui and the others looked at Maple, who seemed to have understood something. "What voice? What did you understand?" "Just now, when it came over, it was releasing a strange aura. You should have felt it, right?" Yun Nuoshing said. When everyone nodded, she continued to answer. "That shouldn't be some kind of aura that was released randomly. It should be. Well, it's using the method of resonance between consciousness and energy to transmit some kind of message. Good heavens, it's an encrypted call." Hui scratched his cheek with a puzzled expression. "But how did you know?" Yun Nuoshing turned to look at Shuang. She reached out and pressed her head. The girl immediately understood. She exclaimed with a blushing face and stuck out her tongue. "After all, when I first met this girl, she used her consciousness to pester me all the way to communicate. Basically, she was sending messages one by one. I had to rely on myself to translate and guess. I had to guess 7 or 8 times before I could barely restore a sentence." Shuang quickly hid in the wings of the little angel. She blushed and did not dare to show her face. Everyone did not know whether to laugh or cry. No wonder he could recognize it. It turned out that there was already a precedent. What did it say just now? Sui Qing brought the topic back to the original point. "Well, let me think. Because I didn't hear it immediately, I need to piece it together to try to recall it now." Yun Nuoshing lowered her head and twirled her hair with her fingers. After pondering for a while, she said in an uncertain tone, "If there's no translation error, it should be saying, leave this place. Judging from the situation of consciousness and energy, it should be these 4 words. Leave this place? Where does this place refer to?" Hui scratched his head in distress and asked the question that Feng had just asked. Profound Heaven Holy City? This starry sky? This void? Who is leaving? It wants to leave? Let the people in this place leave? To what extent is it leaving? Yun Nuoshing's pretty face suddenly wrinkled like a walnut. "You ask me, but how am I supposed to ask? Without any context, how am I supposed to know what it means and where it wants to go if it just repeats these 4 words? Its range of activity is not limited to Profound Heaven Holy City. It wandered around the 3 territories as if it wanted to tell everyone about this matter, to tell other life forms in the starry sky." Sure Shao looked at the place where it disappeared and tried to capture some trace of it, but he failed immediately. When it left, it did not leave any trace behind. Strange things. The incident started more than half an era ago, and since nothing happened for so long, it should not be a big deal. Even if it wandered around the entire starry sky, it should not be a big deal. After all, nothing happened, so it should not be a problem if they just left it alone. After all, these three families did not pay attention to it, right? He believed that the higher-ups of these three families knew about the existence of this white shadow. Perhaps it had done something or taken some measures, but since it was still here, then the result and so on. There was no need to say it out loud. Well, that being said, they would hang this matter up for now and maintain the priority of ordinary attention. They would see if there were any special situations in the future. Half an era was not a long time for the void. If it was some kind of void-level event, then half an era might not have started yet. It might still be in the process of brewing, or it might have just happened, but it might not have reached the point where people would be able to find clues. Of course, it might have ended a long time ago. Well, only the heavens knew that void-level events needed to be observed for a long time before the results could be obtained. About that white shadow, Lord Feng, Lord Hui, I have some interesting information here. Do you want to hear it? I Ching's giggling voice suddenly entered the soul communication, causing them to turn their attention. Hui rolled his eyes and said, "Just say it. It's in the primordial realm." At the beginning of this era, the primordial realm had a node with the same nature as the profound heaven sacred city. At that time, it was forcefully blasted. I heard that the impact was quite big and many people died. I heard from those who survived and experienced the impact that it was a disaster that suddenly erupted without any contact. Well, we don't know what the actual situation is. It's just hearsay. God knows if it's true or not. Anyway, such a thing happened. Forceful detonation and whatnot. This sounded quite dangerous. They definitely had no way of knowing the actual situation for themselves. They could not believe everything they heard from others, nor could they be biased. They could just put a question mark on it and leave it hanging. They did not have the mood to harp on it, unless something happened to it in front of them. In that case, they could consider whether or not it needed to be moved. I'll go look for more clues and see if I can find something interesting. I Ching was about to cut off the soul communication after saying this. Hui suddenly thought of something and hurriedly said, "By the way, little Qingzi, we ran into the battlefield. You have to remind everyone not to enter the battlefield." "Don't worry, Lord Hui. Everyone is now wandering in the void. No one has entered the main battlefield. We only left 100 people in this world's light cluster to deal with emergencies. Everyone is scattered in the frontline nodes of the three sides. If you need anything, just shout and we will be there immediately." Yun Nuoxing was a little curious and asked, "Emergency? Lord Feng, Lord Hui, I saw something interesting. I'll take my leave first." Little Qingzi was scared away. Hui smiled bitterly. After a while, Feng also reacted. He scratched his head and could not help but mutter, "Is it necessary? Is it necessary?" "Actually, it's necessary." Hui nodded. Yun Nuoxing glared at him faintly. In the next 10 days, both the primordial world and the Changyuan Saint Spirit world were very quiet. They stayed in the heaven mystic world's territory and grew mushrooms. They did not even gather for more than 2 times before Shu Qing felt that there was no need to practice anymore. She let them move freely, and the mushrooms grew even more thoroughly. It was really like a mushroom. Staying in this place, they couldn't do anything else. Only when they reported their safety to Yuanji every day could they feel that they were not moldy. They had been to all the places that they could go these days. In order to prevent any possible surveillance eyes from suspecting that there was something wrong with them, they still had to do some normal activities, such as shopping, 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 and shopping. What? Why didn't they sit down and cultivate? The damn environmental rules of this place made it impossible for them to cultivate. Moreover, they were all in the forbidden period. At most, they could only hide in the pavilion and carefully deal with the origin energy. They could not use too much strength to avoid blowing up this place. Other than this place, which seemed to be the most important main battlefield, there were sporadic battles in other places. However, they were basically things that happened in the light balls of other worlds. The details were reported by the people scattered everywhere. In the small battles between the three sides, the primordial world basically won more than they lost. The wins and losses between the Heaven Mystic world and the Chanyuan Saint Spirit world were very balanced. As for this place, which was the main battlefield, recruiting was something that happened every day. They had already experienced a battle. Calculating the time, they were no longer rookies. The camp had also been changed. The people who were recruited were still a mix of celestial gods and Origin Realm experts. However, after a period of selection, only Origin Realm experts remained on the main battlefield. The number of low-level Origin Realm experts was slowly decreasing, as if they were transferred to other battlefields. The other two sides were also doing the same. They could vaguely feel that they were gathering strength and wanted to do something. As for what it was not clear for the time being. The three sides have gathered quite a lot of strength. Hui stood at the edge of the floating island and looked at the positions of the two sides. After watching for a while, he turned to Maple and said, "They have more strength than we had in the battle that day. Moreover, they have changed a lot of people. It seems like many of them have been transferred over from other worlds. Most of them are mid-level Origin Realm experts and above. They can be considered a relatively large force in the current Order Void. Guess what they plan to do? Are they going to fight a decisive battle, or do they want to do something else?" Yun Nuashing turned her head and glanced at him. "Have you ever seen a decisive battle start when the three sides have tacitly worked together to increase their strength? The three sides have begun to gather high-level strength and begin to prepare behind the scenes. There must be a spy in the three sides for them to have such a tacit understanding, right?" Hui nodded. "You don't say. With such loose monitoring and such a casual method, there must be a spy. Although there are quite a few Yuanshi realm experts secretly monitoring the battlefield so that they can't betray us during the battle, you can't control the activities of others during the non-battle period. In this place, there are many ways to pass information out." Yun Nuashing thought carefully and was silent for a while. "That seems to be the case. It's ridiculous." He stretched, and the word bored was written all over his face. "Although we haven't used up much time, these days of wasting time are quite boring for us in a state of war. If it weren't for the underworld, I would have hoped that these peaceful days of small fights could continue." Although Maple said a lot, he caught the most crucial information in an instant. After growing mushrooms for more than 10 days, Maple felt bored. Moreover, he was forced to be bored when he had something to do. His boredom was turning into irritation bit by bit. The speed was very slow, but he had to be mentally prepared. In the past, the main battlefield didn't seem to be so idle. I heard that there were small fights every few days and big battles every once in a while. Now that more than 10 days have passed, it's been quiet long enough. As Hui spoke, he glanced at Maple and joked, "I guess the two sides on the opposite side know that there's a big killer here. They instinctively feel that something is wrong and don't dare to fight." Yun Nuashing rolled his eyes. "The atmosphere is tense and dull before the storm. As you saw just now, the three sides have gathered their strength tacitly. Even if it's not for the final battle, there must be some big movement. The longer it's quiet, the bigger the matter will be." He sighed and looked at the twinkling starry sky. "Let's wait a few more days, woo!" The sound of the bugle horn suddenly swept through the entire camp, startling the two of them. They looked at each other, turned around and disappeared. When they reappeared, they were already in the drill ground. Cu and the others also came out of the pavilion to join them. They came so quickly. Have they been idle for the past 10 days? Monitor was the second group of people to come here. As soon as he came out, he saw Feng Ling and the others gathered neatly. He couldn't help but grin. He scratched his hairline a few times and said, "The past 10 days have indeed been a little strange. There hasn't even been a small battle. Usually, it wouldn't be quiet for so long. It's been quiet for too long. Be careful of the other side's tricks. We didn't see the so-called surprise troops of the primordial world in the last battle. Maybe we will face them head-on this time. Shu Qing led the team to the stage. After waiting for half a minute, when almost everyone had gathered, they looked up and waited for the signal from the horn. It was also at this moment that the horn that roared through the entire camp suddenly stopped. Shu Qing and Monitor were stunned for a moment. Hui looked at them blankly and asked, what does this mean? There's only one sound and a group of people have come out? No, it seems like the order has been revoked. Shu Qing also frowned and looked at the other parts of the camp. The teams from the other camps had also gathered. The sudden revocation of the battle order made everyone a little confused and a little restless. Everyone stood in place for about 10 minutes. Their minds were filled with the word doubt. The higher-ups couldn't have suddenly blown the horn for fun. There should be a reason for them to abruptly revoke the order. But since there was no news after 10 minutes, it should be fine, right? I don't know what happened. Monitor patted his head and smiled bitterly. He waved his hand and said, "Disperse, disperse. God knows what happened." Everyone scratched their heads and responded. Half of them disappeared on the spot, while the other half slowly walked out of the drill ground. Yun Nuoxing and the others looked at each other and shrugged. Just as they were about to return to their previous positions and do what they were supposed to do, a sudden tremor came from the floating island. Woo! The heavy reverberating sound of the horn made Yun Nuoxing and the others who had just stepped out stiffen. They retreated and turned to look at Shu Qing and Monitor, who were also staring at them. They said in unison, "The people above like to blow the horn for fun? This is definitely not the case." Monitor scratched his head hard and looked puzzled. "But I have never seen such a strange, it's the order message." Everyone, who had just dispersed, gathered together once again, waiting for the loudspeaker to come, puff. Everyone! What is this? What was he trying to do? The sudden stop of the horn made Huiqua's head hurt a little. He said, "The people above are definitely itching to blow the horn." Shu Qing and Monitor were also speechless this time. They didn't know what to say. Blowing the horn twice and canceling the order twice. But right after that, the loud sound of the horn rang out once more. This time, it was a series of 15 to 16 trumpets, causing the entire floating island to tremble. This time, it was an accurate command, causing everyone to forget about the inexplicable things just now and switch to combat mode in a second. Their expressions were serious and full of fighting spirit. 16 armies are attacking together. This is the largest battle we have encountered in these years. I am afraid it is close to the decisive battle. Monitor clenched the long spear in his hand and looked dignified in a second. Seeing Huey's puzzled expression, he explained, "There are more than 20 in the Tianxian world. I don't know the exact number. More than 20 heavenly gods of the origin, more than 20 warlords, one warlord leading an army. So far, we have only mobilized 10 warlords and 10 large troops. This time, we have mobilized 16 armies at once. Maybe the other side has also mobilized such a huge force all of a sudden." Hui scratched his head. So, could it be a disagreement just now? Or could it be that monitoring the number of troops sent by the other side found that there was an error and forcibly interrupted my order? Maybe it is both, but that is the matter to be discussed by the higher-ups. Shu Qing shook his head and looked at everyone with a solemn face. "This battle is very dangerous. We must act cautiously. Let's go." The gathering this time was accompanied by all kinds of huge movements that shook the starry sky and the void. It was still the gathering of the three sides, with the two sides scattered and facing each other. In a single battlefield, there were 16 large armies facing each other, densely covering the sky and earth. The formation was spread out to a place far away. The primeval realm experts of both sides were glaring at each other angrily. The warlords who appeared were still at the beginning of the primeval realm, and the highest was the first tier of the primeval realm. Now, the number of primeval realm experts gathered here had reached an exciting 48. They could probably serve the underworld realm as a cold dish, and a small portion at that. It was not very polite to say these words to the top combat strength of the other side, but they were indeed used to it. Furthermore, there was no need for politeness in the war on their side. When the battle was intense, they did not greet the other side's genealogy. It was either because they were too reserved and unwilling to speak, or because they were really at the top of the order void. Even the heavenly god of origin would be so anxious that he would curse. What was wrong with them greeting the enemy's genealogy? Did they have to be gentle and polite when facing an enemy in a life-and-death battle? The Origin Realm, that is their elite team. I didn't expect them to be brought out. Shu Qing's heavy voice made everyone recover from the ridicule in their hearts. They looked forward together, and some bigger things appeared in front of them. 3 huge triangular platforms appeared in the middle of the primordial world's formation. Each side was 10,000 feet long and about 100 feet thick. In the center of the platform was a huge triangular pyramid energy crystal. The entire platform was covered by a thick translucent spherical energy barrier. The energy reaction was astonishing. The people standing on it did not see anything special for the time being. They were just standing on it. Needless to say, they were very familiar with this kind of thing. It was a genuine order creation, and its level was also passable. With the power of more than 1,000 Origin Realm peak experts standing on it and the power of this golden platform, they could defeat someone who had just advanced to the primordial realm. Before it was damaged due to overload, it could defeat at least 4 primordial realm experts, or 1 at the first heaven of the primordial realm. The latter was probably a little difficult. A first heaven of the primordial realm expert should be able to slightly specialize in other aspects and develop a little unbalanced, and they should be able to destroy it. Elite troops? Trump cards? We looked at the 3 golden platforms and seemed to understand why they were fighting this time. The Origin Realm probably wanted to end the battle quickly to regain some lost ground. After all, they had fled in defeat last time. Currently, there was no supremacy at the peak of the early-stage primordial realm, so it was not considered a decisive battle. That elite troop is the true trump card. Shu Qing shook her head, her expression gloomy. Their strength is definitely higher than ours. From what I've heard from the seniors these past few days, just that one team is comparable to an entire army. When they first appeared, they caused our sky-profound world to fight the most tragic battle in history. Even several of our military commanders were almost defeated in the siege. Yun Nuoshing and the others silently calculated for a while and felt that the so-called elite troop was a troop equipped with high-level order creations. Needless to say, the members were elites, and the order creations should be powerful enough. Just like their energy pagoda, a peak-stage Origin Realm expert with an energy pagoda would be able to wipe out the 3 battlefields with a little agility. Oh, it could barely be considered an original-level creation, and there was the word mass-produced behind it. The people of the Heaven Mystic world were already prepared. This time, there were a few more troops in the army that looked very powerful. They had already activated the array formation when they were still confronting each other. They were probably elite troops and were confronting the troops on the 3 platforms. Then, the challenge, whoa! Die, you bastards from the Origin Realm! Flatten the idiots of the Heaven Mystic world! We had just opened his mouth to chant when roars that shook the starry sky suddenly resounded. While they were still in a daze, both sides roared and suddenly charged at each other. Countless energy torrents crossed the battlefield first and collided violently with the energy barriers. All right, stop shouting. They're going to fight directly. We shook his head, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. He released his energy without even raising his shield, blocking the thousands of attacks that descended in an instant. Then, He raised his chin at Shu Qing and the others. Start fighting, start fighting! Feng can't wait to beat them up. Everyone turned to look and saw that a certain someone had already started to draw his bow and knock his arrows. There were 200 to 300 2-foot-long formations flashing around him, and energy arrows with immense penetrative power rained down on the entire starry sky. When he saw everyone looking over, he raised his chin and raised his eyebrows. What are you waiting for? I've already launched a few thousand attacks. Go. Beat them up. Hui and the others could not help but smile bitterly. After this guy could release his energy without suppressing it, he began to do whatever he wanted. While maintaining the same attack power, the frequency of his attacks increased by several times. Still, every energy arrow could penetrate an energy barrier, allowing people to rush forward and break through their defenses. When the primordial heavenly gods of both sides entered the star domain to fight, the two armies clashed fiercely. This battle immediately became white-hot, so intense that it was almost impossible to distinguish between the two sides. Chapter 1969. If you had to find a reason for them to participate in this war, you could use Maple's philosophy. Give them a little punishment. Temporarily. However, this matter had to be brought up first. They were acting first and reporting later. The more shocking the execution process was, the better the effect would be when they reported it. Sooner or later, they would drag the three parties together. Domestic violence, and what not in the backyard, was a headache. It was said that to resist foreign aggression, one must first pacify the internal affairs. Although the vast order void was described as a backyard, the endless territories and worlds all belonged to the living beings of order. If they wanted to truly pacify the internal affairs, they could only bring all these things under their control. Impossible. Even if they had nothing better to do, they wouldn't do such a thing. They had to do their best just to deal with the underworld. How would they have the time to pacify the internal affairs? In such a large order void, how would they have the time to deal with so many things? That was why there was an advantage for the three parties to control the entire order void. The only advantage. Now that the three parties were holding down the order void, the only remaining upper plane, they only needed to hold down the three parties. That was why it was only a matter of time before they gathered the three parties together for a meeting. If they didn't want to have a meeting, they would just kill them, let Maple out, and fight to the death. Bah, they would just take back the net and roast all the fish. In short, the upper plane had to be pacified. He had to act quickly. Fortunately, Maple's response to such matters was relatively slow. If they still couldn't hold down the upper plane by the time Maple responded, then Maple would really act recklessly. By then, the entire world would really be quiet, just like when the world was first created. Anyway, they just needed to be quiet. They didn't say how to be quiet, right? The group of people sitting upright and not breathing loudly was quiet. The empty void was also very quiet. And the latter was more to Maple's liking. Although he wouldn't be able to stop himself from kneading the mud if it was quiet for less than 100 or 200 years, at least it was quiet. TSK that. Let's talk about it when the time comes. Right now, they were in the middle of a battle. Although he didn't need to move and wasn't afraid that someone could break through his defense, in order to prevent others from thinking that he was slacking off by letting the sea of void pass, it was better to move a little. It was also good to observe the situation of the battle and see if there was anything interesting. The charging of the armies of the primordial world and the heaven mystic world generally didn't deviate from their understanding of the battles within the worlds of order. The forms and methods would change, but the essence wouldn't change. The main force would charge forward, while the ones who bombarded the rear would gather energy to attack. If it was just energy attacks, the primordial world, which copied all kinds of creations, would definitely be more powerful. The heaven mystic world relied on a small portion of their energy, rules, and order creations to take on a huge responsibility. 80% of them relied on arrays to fight. On the other hand, the primordial world had 1 or 2 energy creations. Those arrays that were used to charge and break through enemy lines didn't have any fixed restrictions. Furthermore, the range was larger. Dragging the enemy into the array could also give them a large number of weakening effects in a rhythmic manner. What was more noteworthy was the primordial world's 3 platforms. More than 3,000 peak-level Origin stage experts were cooperating with the power of the platforms to display their might. As expected, those were relatively high-level creations of order. If they were allowed to charge straight into the Heaven Mystic World's army, the effect might not be inferior to letting Maple activate a small-scale array. 2,000 or 3,000 arrays could just use ordinary attacks, and this place would be quiet in a few rounds. Therefore, that group of elites definitely couldn't be allowed to run around like they were out of control. On the Heaven Mystic World side, there were also teams of the same level that were facing them head-on. Elites against elites, it was quite reasonable. It was just that the Heaven Mystic World's army was much weaker. If they continued fighting like this, their arrays might be broken in about 30 minutes. That thing seems to be quite powerful. Huisho cupped his eyes and looked at the 3 golden platforms. I didn't expect the primordial world to be able to produce such creations of order. Small Hour's gray eyes turned to look at them for a while before she softly said, "War platform." The moment she spoke, she even accurately said the name. This matter was not quite the same. The nature seemed to have become more serious. Hui immediately thought that it was a creation of Origin. However, it didn't have Origin energy, so he treated it as a creation of order left behind from the previous era. His face trembled. A product of your era? Yes, it wasn't created by the venerable gods. However, its original form was the Order Battle formation created by the venerable gods. You can think of the war platform as a weakened version of the Order Battle formation. Oh, it's something that others tried to replicate and create. Hui understood and heaved a sigh of relief. Small Hour nodded slightly. The war platform was the first version that was eliminated in the early days. In the later stages, before the entire defense line was equipped with a series of creations of Origin such as the Fortress of Origin, they had been researching the war platform and had been updated many times. I remember that the last version of the war platform was before the Order Battle formation. They should have been using the Creation platform. What's so special about it? It can allow the power of order to spread. Together with the order domain, it can strengthen the domain's ability to resist chaos corruption. If order has the upper hand, it can also spread and occupy chaos. However, order has never used the latter function. Other than that, the important function of the war platform remains. Hui crossed his arms and muttered to himself. That means that if it's the creation platform, it would be a little troublesome for us. However, the war platform is not a problem. Still, it's quite a hindrance to just leave it there. Feng, can you think of a way to shoot 2 arrows over there? Hui used his eyes to point at the elite versus elite battlefield and the 3 war platforms. He spoke through the soul transmission. Oh, I've already tried. Yun Nuoxing glanced over there and looked away. He continued to shoot thousands of energy arrows as if nothing had happened. The array-breaking bow form is maintained with the lowest power. I can't use normal attacks to break through the layers of defense. One platform actually has 300 layers of defense like a tortoise shell. I really didn't expect that. It's more than enough to withstand the attack of a beginner. Then you just have to use a little more strength. Cloud-piercing arrow, the fall of thousands of worlds. Huey's face darkened as he finished the sentence for Yun Nuoxing. Yun Nuoxing shrugged and gave him a "you've already told me the result" look. He waved his hand, and the 300 magic arrays behind him duplicated twice and stacked on top of each other. Then, he continued to draw his bow. Then I'll just increase the attack by a little bit. Just a little bit. Hui was silent. 100 million dots or a little bit. Well, I can't say for sure. It may be 100 million dots if I'm unlucky. Yun Nuoshing said with a smile. This time, he only pulled the bow slowly. He squinted his left eye and looked through the layers of battle zones. He aimed at the elite troops who were fighting, spraying all kinds of explosions and light pollution all over the starry sky. He pulled the bowstring to the maximum and muttered to himself, "It's been a long time since I've used a skill that I haven't used for a long time." Cloud-piercing arrow, array-breaking arrow. A huge energy halo suddenly exploded on the bowstring. 300 magic arrays shattered at the same time. The shattered energy gathered and melted into the arrow. Then, it suddenly turned into a dark red lightning and swept across the starry sky. When he saw the light flash by without even dragging the energy tail, Hui had already put his hands together with a blank face. "I hope he's fine. Oh no, I hope he's not completely fine." Although it was an attack with the effect of breaking the magic array, the attack power it contained. Yes, without the basic attack power, even if it was skillful, it would not be able to break the magic array. And what was very troublesome was Maple's strength. Yes, all his attack power, or basic attack power, was off the charts. That meant that it could even be used to break the magic array. Boom! Bang! 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 The boundless energy echoes that suddenly exploded across the starry sky startled everyone on the battlefield. The dark red energy of unknown origin traversed half of the battlefield with unimaginable speed. There were over 300 streaks of energy that were only 1 foot wide, and like a dense cluster of light beams, everything that appeared in their path was mercilessly pierced through. Be it gathered energy, creations, or energy barriers, there was even a pinnacle of origin that was grazed by 3 streaks of light. More than half of his body and soul had disappeared, and he almost died on the spot. Countless phenomena caused by the cluster of light beams occurred at the same time across tens of thousands of miles. The energy attacks that came into contact with the light beams on the battlefield collapsed, and the remaining energy was detonated on the spot. The exploding spheres of light were like a cluster of stars that had been lit up, densely filling everyone's vision. They were even pulling on each other and gathering into an even greater energy storm. In just a few seconds, the energy storm had expanded by thousands of times. Looking at the places that were not affected, that area was almost instantly lit up with an extremely large firework. The impact of the energy that exploded at the same time almost scared the troops on both sides. Seeing the expanding light balls of energy, their hearts trembled and they hurriedly retreated. The entire starry sky began to tremble. Coupled with the fact that this was an attack with the effect of breaking the formation, the damage and impact on the barrier and domain that encompassed this area skyrocketed. It could no longer withstand the energy that exploded from the inside and destroyed the domain indiscriminately. The starry sky was torn apart, traversing the entire battlefield. In an instant, all the remaining energy that had not been annihilated was pulled into the void and annihilated. The entire battlefield forcibly calmed down in the face of the great explosion and the penetrating void cracked. At the same time, in another place, 300 energy beams hit the energy barrier of the war platform heavily. Before the elite troops on both sides could notice, they had only pierced through the defense in an instant, penetrating the bottom of the war platform and the triangular pyramid crystal that was the core. The energy that went out of control was instantly ignited by the energy of cloud piercing, breaking the array. The violent sound of energy trembling, the violent energy movement, and the light that penetrated the war platform crashed into the senses of the elite troops on both sides, making their eyes widen. A violent and unreasonable energy with enormous pressure occupied their minds. King retreat. Someone roared at the top of their lungs. The people on both sides all rushed in the direction of their troops with pale white faces. It was also at this moment that the entire battlefield exploded. The explosion of the 3 war platforms added to the energy storm that shook the starry sky with the greatest explosion of energy. The dazzling white ball of energy suddenly expanded to a radius of over 100,000 kilometers. It was like a sun had suddenly smashed into the battlefield, dancing with the energy storm. In just a short while, the two merged into an even larger storm, constantly expanding and expanding. It was so fast that the people nearby all pissed their pants in fright. They hurriedly used everything they had to run as far away as possible. We completed the sentence with a stupefied expression. Even if it was a formation-breaking attack, it could also set off fireworks in the starry sky. Although the fireworks were very quiet and restrained, each explosion of energy was actually very small in scale. This was because it was only using the characteristics of energy to convert all the energy affected by the cloud-piercing formation breaking into destructive energy, erupting with all the remaining energy in one go. The affected energy would also continue to affect other energy that could be touched, like a chain reaction. In the end, it would ignite all the energy on the battlefield, so there were only small explosions of energy. However, when all the energy was gathered together, the explosion was still quite frightening. It was equivalent to tens of millions of full-powered reciprocity attacks. Of course, the destructive force was rather scattered, or this place would have been blown up long ago. Just looking at the ball of light that had expanded to almost 1,000,000 kilometers, it was a relatively small explosion in the history of explosions that Maple had created. However, the shocking effect had already reached the maximum for both sides. Yes, it had reached the maximum. It could be seen from the shock and silence that filled the battlefield. Even the movements on the other two battlefields had become much quieter after witnessing the explosion of energy. The entire starry sky had become much quieter. After the light of energy had disappeared, the energy reaction of the entire battlefield had dropped to an extreme. All the energy in the area had been detonated, and the space had also interfered. Now there was not even a trace of energy left in this place. Needless to say, this must have been caused by someone accidentally using 100,000,000 points of energy. I forgot that there's a lot of energy in this place. It's easy to detonate them all together. Maple's slightly stunned voice came quietly. He did not sound apologetic at all. He definitely did it on purpose. He just wanted to create a big explosion. Now it was great. At this moment, the entire army was silent. They did not know how to deal with it. In the energy explosion just now, many people from the primordial world were caught in it. Probably not many. After all, it was aimed at the 3 war platforms. The energy explosion seemed to have caused a huge commotion, but the real point was that the destructive power of the energy explosion was restrained near the center of the war platforms. This meant that even if they were caught in the energy ball of light just now, as long as they were not dragged into the center, they could still survive. Therefore, not many people died. He had told Maple before that this was a frightening skill used to clear out the battlefield. At first glance, it looked like they were scared to death. After counting, not many people died. However, there should still be dozens of small teams. In addition, the group of elite teams was in the center. No matter how fast they ran, they must have lost some people. Boom! The rumbling sound of energy explosion suddenly exploded on the primordial world side. Arrows trailing the light of energy quickly fell on their position like lightning, causing energy explosions again and again. The silent starry sky was once again covered by the sound of explosions. The screams mixed in with the explosions caused countless people to suddenly come back to their senses. What are you waiting for? Is the battle over? Is it over? Or has the enemy surrendered? Are they all dead? Yun Nuashing frowned slightly in displeasure. The energy contained in the action of pulling the bow in her hand increased with each stroke. Since there's nothing left, why are you still waiting? What? Waiting in a daze is giving you a chance? Do you want the other side to turn the tables? Give me. Yun Nuashing fiercely stomped his foot on the formation, and a vast and mighty energy shockwave suddenly swept through the entire sky profound world's formation. A roar that was mixed with mind, soul, and consciousness exploded in the depths of everyone's souls. Brace yourselves! Before the other side dies to the point where only dregs are left. Use all your strength with all your might. That roar was a form of encouragement, causing everyone who was in a daze to suddenly shiver. Their chaotic thoughts were forcefully dispersed by an energy that forcefully intervened. Only a mighty battle intent was left in their minds. We saw a group of people screaming and rushing towards the primordial world with an even more rapid and violent momentum. The mighty energy shock wave scattered across the entire starry sky. He was completely dumbfounded. He hurriedly pulled Maple, gritted his teeth, and roared in a low voice, "This is not the battlefield of order and chaos, you silly fool! Is there a need to roar to encourage them? Are you dazed?" Yun Nuashing, who had entered a cold and incomparably serious state, instantly came back to her senses. She saw Siyu, Qing Huang, and the others looking at her in a daze. She couldn't help but be startled. Ah? She then turned her head to look at the Heaven Mystic World's people, who had transformed into evil spirits and were charging on the battlefield. This. She was silent for a while. Her face was full of sweat. It's over. I couldn't help it. I can't take it back. What do we do? Everyone, how the hell do we know what to do? We really got excited as we fought. Great, now that we shouted, we can't take it back. The primordial world's elite team's formation had been broken, and they were all frightened. Their morale had plummeted, and they were accompanied by all kinds of panic and confusion. The Heaven Mystic World situation should have been the same, because they couldn't figure out who had launched the attack. In the end, his roar caused everyone to charge and break through the enemy's formation. The elite team led the charge into the center of the enemy's formation. There was no need to even look. If the primordial heavenly god of the primordial world's side didn't come down to suppress the situation, they would be completely finished. No, there was no need to suppress the situation anymore. The primordial world's army was already done for. The battle between the two teams whose morale had reached the peak. There was no more suspense. The team whose morale had skyrocketed was still in an unparalleled state because of Feng Yi's roar. If the primordial world's army could withstand this round, he would crush the opposing primordial realm expert to death in the void on the spot. In the current situation, only the opposing primordial realm experts could withstand it. Therefore, if they could withstand it, it would be the opposing primordial realm experts' fault. That's right, because all the members had received too much stimulation. The primordial heavenly god's roar could buff all the members at the front line of the void. The group of origin realm experts here were all buffed to the max. They were now being dragged along by Shu Qing's team and were rampaging behind the battlefield. A fixed cannon turret was running around. The final result was actually within their expectations. They did not even make a move in the second half of the battle. They just stared blankly at the group of people from the Heaven Mysteries world who were on steroids charging into the opposite side of the battlefield. If it were not for the primordial realm experts on both sides who felt that something was wrong and hurriedly turned back to control the battlefield after noticing that something was wrong, they might have already killed their way to the Holy Spirit realm and Long Yuan realm and cooperated with their own people to wrap them up. After that, they originally wanted to wrap the dumplings, but the primordial heavenly gods from the primordial world suddenly pestered them like crazy. They had no choice but to turn around and beat them up. After all, the stimulation effect would last for a while before it ended. The military governors of the Heaven Mysteries world were not fools. Seeing that the primordial world's army was almost completely destroyed, they took this opportunity to lead their own teams to launch the next round of attacks on the opposing primordial realm experts. It was quite intense. If they could leave 2 or 3 primordial realm experts behind, it would be even more intense. Unfortunately, they only beat 3 of them half to death and severely injured the other 4. The remaining one hurriedly fled back to the array formation with his people. They had almost directly attacked the primordial world's array formation. At the end of the battle, the other two battlefields also announced their withdrawal. This time, all three sides fought a little fiercely. It was unknown if they were affected by the energy explosion midway. Even though the Heaven Mysteries world and the Holy Spirit realm fought fiercely, they were still evenly matched. One could only judge whether they were ruthless or not from the number of casualties. However, the battle between the primordial world and the Holy Spirit realm was interesting. It seemed that the team of surprise troops had gone to that battlefield and half-crippled the Holy Spirit realm. If they were given a little more time, they might have been able to defeat the teams of the two worlds. Unfortunately, the battle on the other side of the primordial world had ended prematurely. They would not have a good ending if they continued to fight. They could only collect their spoils and hurriedly withdraw. If I'm not wrong, the primordial realm experts from the primordial world did not immediately withdraw when they saw that they were almost completely wiped out. They wanted to stall for time on the other side. Yun said, they wanted to stall for time on this side so that the other side could heavily injure the Holy Spirit realm and the Holy Spirit realm. We immediately took over the topic. The other side is probably fighting very hard. The residual energy has a hint of madness. However, they probably did not expect this side to be defeated so quickly. It seems that even though they came prepared this time, they still underestimated the power of a certain explosive. The battle only lasted for half an hour, but the scale was 1/3 larger than the last time. They were still completely wiped out under such circumstances. These primordial realm experts who escaped will probably be alone the next time they come out. Yun glanced at him and rolled her eyes. He had indeed lost control a little, just a little. Hey, that didn't count. It was not considered losing control when he fought. Wasn't it just a little excitement? A guy who can get excited just by acting. We punched him in the head with a look of disdain, making him speechless. He covered his head and muttered, I'm sorry, I was wrong, I was really wrong. They didn't really come here to fight. It's not worth it to destroy the entire battlefield just to punish them. I'm sorry, I was really wrong. I'm just a brainless bug. You looked at the endless starry sky from the window, and the camp that was the size of a sesame seed below. She ran back to Little Star and pulled him and said, This temple feels so high. I haven't seen such a scene in a long time. This temple wasn't very big. It was like a little brother compared to the Origin Temple, which was thousands of miles long and wide. However, they wouldn't climb to the top if they didn't have anything to do, so it had been a long time since they were able to look down from above. Normally, they would only see energy surging, and energy exploding. Everything they saw was energy. The group was brought into the largest temple by Shu Qing. Seeing that he was a little nervous, they roughly understood what was going to happen. After fighting twice on the battlefield, as long as there was no problem with the records of the domain they were talking about and the higher-ups weren't idiots, they would definitely be able to tell that these two battles were obviously very abnormal compared to the past. Therefore, they naturally had to find the abnormality that suddenly appeared and talk about it. First, they had to distinguish between the traitors and the traitors. Then, they had to chat a little. Yes, it was to chat a little with the higher-ups of the Tianxian world and talk about their ideals and the future. Or they could catch a group of people with suspicious identities, backgrounds, and powers and have a good fight on the spot. But if they really leave this abnormality in their own place alone, I will really think that they are crazy, Hui said in a telepathic voice. The aura in the temple is very tightly concealed. Guess how many people you will see when you open the door later? 180 yuan sure. Didn't Shu Qing and the others say that there are only 20? Where did your 4 or 5 times the number come from? Yun Nuoshing said. Oh, 20 then. It's just in front. I haven't been here much so. Shu Qing turned around and reminded them. Seeing that Feng Ling and the other 10 people all had serious and solemn expressions, he took a deep breath and gently knocked on the door. "Come in." As soon as Shu Qing knocked on the door, the 10 feet tall door opened a crack. Seeing this, he gently pushed the door open and led Feng Ling and the others into the hall. In the empty hall there was a long round table. As it was the only decoration in the room, it attracted their attention. At this moment, there were only 5 figures sitting at the table. However, there were many people standing around the hall. Some were standing by the window and looking at the door, some were leaning against the wall with their arms crossed. The 20 figures in the hall immediately focused their attention on them. The entire hall was filled with the aura of the Yuanshe realm. The 5 figures sitting at the table had the most powerful aura. The one in the middle was a beautiful girl. She had a pretty face and a heavenly fragrance. Taking a closer look at her eyes. Dead fish eyes. Ahem, no, her eyes were lifeless, like a deep frozen well. He did not know why he said that, but he had such a feeling. Her eyes were deep and frozen. There was probably an evil spirit sealed under the thick layer of ice. A faint evil spirit would leak out from the ice, which was quite in line with the style of the other primeval in this room, who were all wearing ghost-faced armors. This pair of eyes was like Shu Qing's. One of them hid an evil spirit's crystal-clear eyes, while the other had lost its light as if hope was broken. They both hid a story. A person in the 3rd heaven of the Yuanshe realm was the ruler of the Tianqian world. He and Hui both expected that there would be a room full of Yuanshe realm cultivators, but they didn't expect that the person in charge would come personally. However, they weren't particularly surprised. It was still within the scope of their guess. After all, such a big commotion was caused in other people's territory. If it were them, they would also appear personally to meet them. A group of 11 people walked into the hall and looked around. Finally, their eyes fell on the few people on the table. At this moment, Yun Nuoxing and the young girl on the table, who looked young but was also an undying person, had been staring at each other for more than a minute. The 2 guys with dull eyes just stared at each other without saying anything. There were no flames or lightning. They just stared at each other. Hui and the others felt that there was something wrong with the way the 2 of them were looking at each other. They were all stunned. The people in the hall also felt that something was wrong. However, since their boss didn't say anything, they didn't dare to say anything. They just watched the 2 of them stare at each other with empty and meaningful gazes. Hui couldn't help but suddenly reach out to block Feng's line of sight. He lowered his voice and asked, "What are you doing?" The moment his line of sight was blocked, Yun Nuoxing was stunned. The young girl saw that his attention was relaxed. She raised her head slightly and said calmly, "You lost. TSK." Yun Nuoxing tilted her head and smacked her lip. She swung her long hair towards Hui's face. She glared at him and grinned. "Look at what you've done. Everyone. These 2 people. What are they playing at?" The young girl stood up lightly and continued to look at Yun Nuoxing. "Your bravery in battle should be rewarded. However, I have some doubts. You know why I'm here." Yun Nuoxing's expression was solemn. "I'm only here for that path. As for your worries, there's no need to worry. We're not guests from those 2 places as you guessed. The reason is in your heart. However, do you know that only divine weapons can clear the thorns in the path ahead for me? Oh, to hell with that path." However, this sentence could be used as an excuse for the rest of his life. It was the path of the primeval realm. Any primeval realm cultivator would think that this person was busy looking for a path. However, the truth was that he had already been forced to destroy the path. Now, he was just saying this as an excuse. The last sentence was also serious. After all, the primeval god and the others couldn't find a way. There's always a way out. You don't have to worry. If there's any obstacle in the way of the great path, I'll find another way. I won't be swayed. If that's the case, I'd like to hear more." Everyone in the room stared at the 2 people talking. This damn way of talking. Can't these 2 people talk properly? Cough, cough, cough. The 8-foot man standing at the side couldn't stand it anymore and coughed twice. The two people immediately recovered from the strange atmosphere. The girl's expression changed slightly, as if she wanted to change her expression but failed. To put it simply, we've already guessed that you're here for this path. However, if you feel that the normal path won't work, we have another way here. Seeing that you've brought great results to the sky mystic world, we'd like to discuss it with you in detail. We and the others. Does she have to be so ruthless just to change the way of talking? Is she in a hurry to return the words she borrowed? The people from the sky mystic world couldn't help but grimace and cover their faces. They couldn't get used to the way their boss spoke. Usually, she wouldn't speak and they would respond on her behalf. They didn't know why she suddenly took the initiative to speak today. So, what's the method you're talking about? Yun Nuoshing crossed his arms and revealed an interested expression. The girl looked at him and lowered her hands from her abdomen. She pointed downwards and said, "It's related to the secret of this void. It's also the cause and effect of our three families gathering here." Chapter 1970. When Yun Nuoshing and the others heard about the beginning of cause and effect, their minds were filled with the same thought. It's here, it's finally the important plot. Mushroom, who has been fighting 2 battles here for more than 10 days, is finally going to stir up trouble. Speaking of which, there is something wrong with the void, but why can't they find it? It can't be. A group of mid-tier primeval, 6 inheritors and 1 executor can't find the anomaly in the void. It's unbelievable. Oh, they couldn't seriously search for it because they didn't want to cause chaos. Anyway, they had confirmed that there was something wrong with the void from the beginning, but they couldn't find the anomaly seriously. Shuang was even more excited than them. She was so excited that she was grabbing his waist. Well, Siyu was grabbing his left waist, and Shuang was grabbing his right waist. He almost rushed into the void when they both grabbed his waist. There is a rather strange region in the depths of the void. The 8-foot man took over his boss's speech and said to Yun Nuoshing and the others, "That place can only be seen with the naked eye and can't be sensed by any other means. If we hadn't seen it with our own eyes, we would have doubted its existence." Strange region? Hui scratched his head and stole a glance at Maple. Seeing that he had something to say but didn't intend to say it, Hui said it for him. How strange is it? It opens once every 100 years, and then it will be closed all the time. The 8-foot man folded his arms and frowned. We still don't know the specific situation of that region. We only know that Quada is like a small box, an incomplete enclosed space, a small sealed world. Although we can see the sun, the moon, and the stars, we can't reach them high up in the sky. There is a layer of barrier at a very high place that seals off the entire world, and the region is very vast. According to the information we have so far, it is at least the size of a world's light cluster. It's all solid ground? And we can't even touch the edge? That's right. Seeing Hui and the others frowning, the 8-foot man shrugged and said, "That's how it is. It's probably because of the concept of infinity. Judging from the rules, its real size should be the size of a light cluster that can fill an entire world." Yun Nuoshing couldn't help but murmur in her soul communication, "A land spanning hundreds of billions of light years. Interesting. It may also be infinite in essence. If I'm not mistaken, this should be the place we're looking for, unless there's something strange about this void. Coincidentally, there are 2 or 3 things that can't be seen. If that's the case, then there's nothing we can do. We can only blame it on our bad luck." Hui rolled his eyes and raised his hand to point at his group of people. "You're telling us this? You mean you want us to go in?" "It only opens once every 100 years, and we go in for a stroll. The reason why the 3 clans are gathered here is that they will send people in together?" The 8-foot man glanced at him and nodded. "That's right, that's what I meant. We are also a little confused. Ning Fei suddenly added, "We heard that the primordial world occupied the upper planes. Your heaven mystic world and long wall realm appeared later because of resistance. Why did you suddenly say that this unknown region is the reason why you are gathered here?" Everyone in the hall was stunned for a moment. They all looked at them with strange expressions. The 8-foot man widened his eyes. "You don't know?" Hui scratched his head with a blank expression. "Know what?" The strange atmosphere in the hall became even more intense. Even Shu Qing couldn't help but glance at them, causing the 10 of them to be at a loss. Judging from the atmosphere, they must have misunderstood something, but they didn't know where they got it wrong. "Well, I can now confirm that you didn't come from those 2 clans. You should have come from a distant void region. I didn't expect you to not know about this." The 8-foot man shook his head, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. "Our 3 clans have been confronting each other here for several epochs. Let me count, about 3 or 4 epochs." Yun Nuoxing and the others were dumbfounded. They couldn't figure out the cause and effect. After all, they were outsiders. They had just entered for a dozen days and had been busy fighting in the void frontlines. 3 or 4 epochs ago was when they were fighting crazily. How could they know what happened in the world of order? We only know that 5 epochs ago, the primordial world had already integrated the upper planes. Then there's nothing else. That's just a bluff. The 8-foot man sneered and shook his head. 5 epochs ago, their so-called integration of the upper planes was just the places where their hands and feet could reach. There are some places that they either haven't touched or haven't reached, such as the Changyuan and Saint Spirit realms, such as this place. This void was originally our territory. Back then, the heaven mystic world didn't even have a name. It was just a world group that lived in a corner. We were in charge of tens of thousands of world light blobs, and one of them was this world light blob. At that time, we knew about the existence of the primordial world first, and we also knew that they were very far away from us. Later on, in simple words, one day they attacked us and we were forced to fight. We retreated, shrank, and retreated to the battlefield. They pursued us relentlessly, and we fought back and forth in this void for a long time. One day, this world light blob exploded with a boom, and the mysterious land appeared. At that time, 3 or 4 eras ago, I don't know the exact date. It was also the beginning of the confrontation between our 3 factions. By the way, the Changyuan and Saint Spirit realms were involved. It seems that when they saw the primordial world retreating and ignoring them, they chased us and came here. Yun Nuoxing and the others. "What the hell was this? You chase me, I fight you?" It was likely that in the 52nd or 23rd epoch, the girl from the heaven mystic world had also entered the primordial beginning realm. Therefore, the supremacies from the primordial world couldn't kill them all at once and ended up in a stalemate. Right now, apart from the fact that the mysterious place has been sealed and covered up, most of the other things are not known by everyone in the void. However, if you ask someone in the profound heaven holy city or the nodes of the other 2 sects, you'll at least know when we confronted each other. Although you won't be able to get a clear answer, you'll at least have a vague answer, such as the reason is unknown, something is there, and so on. It's strange that you don't know. The 8-foot man shrugged. We are a small place. Well, we don't know much about these things. Furthermore, our purpose for coming here is very clear, so we didn't ask about these things. We patted Feng's shoulder and revealed a helpless expression. He muttered through his soul transmission, "That's ridiculous." "Alright, we know about these things too." We suddenly put on a reluctant expression. "Since you've already let us know, then you must let us go, right? Can we ask the reason and what benefits there are?" There were as many excuses as they wanted. They just wanted to ask for an explanation. They knew too little, so there was nothing wrong with asking clearly. At this moment, the girl spoke. She looked at Yun Nuoxing and said, "The divine weapon that you are looking for to cut through the thorns is inside. The power obtained by the primordial world also comes from there. That elite weapon? The 8-foot-tall man nodded. Some of us, and some of the people from the two families, even found a way to reach the primordial realm from there. At present, there is no good way to enter the primordial realm. We heard that the celestial realm has a more stable way, but the celestial realm has been sealed for several epochs. The first great world is sealed, and we don't have a way to enter that world without disturbing it. Those guys from the primordial world even went over to fight, but in the end, the people from the celestial realm didn't come out. Just a barrier alone injured more than half of them, a military governor couldn't help but say. Since you said this, I have to add, that supremacy even seriously injured himself. I'm dying of laughter. Yun Nuoshing and the others sweated profusely when they heard them talk about the celestial realm. They knew that the primordial world had attacked the celestial realm, but they didn't expect that the supremacy would be beaten half to death by the creation's barrier in the form of a counterattack. If this matter spread to the celestial realm, it would make the world laugh for 2 epochs. After the others finished speaking, Hui deliberated and hesitated for a while before saying, although I'm a little confused, since there is such a chance, no matter how small the probability is, we should give it a try. In that case, let's take a break and reorganize for a period of time. 20 days later, the mysterious place will open again. At that time, there will be 50 teams from each of the 3 parties joining in. Shu Qing, you and your team will go together. Shu Qing was slightly stunned and quickly cupped her hands. Shu Qing understands. Siyu's brain worked a little faster. She suddenly said, but why 50 teams? Is there a limit to the mysterious place? Since even you can't go in, there should be a limit. For example, the primeval realm can't enter, and there can't be too many people entering. The 8-foot man scratched his head and said, No, there is no such restriction. The reason why there are 50 teams is because if we include our own trump cards and elite teams, there will be about 50 teams with a total of 6,000 people. All of them are the real elites of our own family. No matter how many there are, we can only throw in ordinary teams. Ordinary teams won't be of much use even if they are mixed in. This is not the same as the elite teams formed by a mixture of elite warriors and ordinary warriors in the past. This is a true elite team formed by all of the elite warriors. It will be very dangerous for ordinary warriors to be mixed in. This is also considered a part of the battle between the 3 sides. If the other 2 sides suddenly let a portion of their people in, that would be purely shameless. We can also call for more people on the spot. As for the reason why the primeval realm can't enter, the 3 sides will keep an eye on each other on the day the mysterious place opens. No one in the primeval realm can sneak in. Yun Nuoshing and company were silent. There were 9 primeval realm experts standing in front of them. That's all. Wait for 20 days. After we are ready, we will head to the deepest void and head to the mysterious place. The 8-foot man nodded at them. Let's go back. After watching Yun Nuoshing and company leave, everyone in the hall gathered together. They exchanged glances for a while before looking at their boss, who was still looking at the tightly shut door. He couldn't help but ask, Boss, what do you think after seeing it up close? Unfathomable. The girl threw out these words indifferently, causing the expressions of everyone in the room to change. They could only come to this conclusion after seeing it up close. Then, where did those 10 people come from? It was ridiculous that a group of primeval realm experts like them couldn't see through a group of people at the peak of origins. Although we can't be 100% sure that it has nothing to do with them, the suspicion is indeed much lower. I'm more concerned about whether they can block the primeval realm team. It's hard for us to say. The strange power that team has seems to be related to that mysterious place. Since we can't see through it, then, they should be able to fend off that team. If they are more flexible, they should be able to cooperate with others to kill that team. It's an inexplicable reason. In short, let's tell everyone to be careful. After chatting with Xu Qing for a while and telling her about the team, Yun Nuoxing and company returned to the pavilion. Just as everyone sat down and sealed the pavilion, Yun Nuoxing immediately shouted through soul transmission, "Little Qing, get everyone to prepare energy pagodas of all levels. We might have found the place. In 20 days we will bring people in. Secretly bring people in and follow us. Remember to bring the energy pagodas. Pile them up as much as you can. Round them up to hundreds of millions. If it's not enough, go back to the front lines to replenish. TSK, if it weren't for the fact that I can't put the Temple of Origin in my pocket, I would have asked you to bring 2 pagodas over. Yes. Equip all the teams you brought and go in together." Hui had just taken a sip of tea. At this moment, he turned his head and spat it out. His face twitched violently. "Feng, is there a need to make such a big fuss?" After ending the soul transmission with I Ching, Yun Nuoxing glanced at Hui and sighed faintly. "How is this a big fuss? This is just normal firepower. With the nature of things happening everywhere we go, it just so happens that the mysterious place is about to open in 10 or 20 days. It's so coincidental that it makes people uneasy and have a headache." Everyone nodded, but could not help but smile bitterly. This was firepower preparation on the scale of guarding against the highest-level Void incident. The only thing left was for the Void frontline army to move to this place. It seemed that he was really afraid of the accidents that happened every time he went on a long journey. Because they did not know the characteristics of the mysterious place, and did not know if there would be any blockage inside and outside that would cause communication to be impossible, Yun Nuoxing and Hui arranged the matters of the Void frontline according to the situation that they would be isolated from the outside for a period of time. Then, they threw everything to Yuan Ji and Qing Jun, who were still guarding the front line. Qing Jun was still in the pagoda, so only Yuan Ji was left. Even he himself felt a little apologetic about the fact that the 2 highest-ranking commanders were leaving everything to their own adjutant to manage the frontline affairs. Especially when he saw that girls seriously agree to it without any complaints. He felt even more. "Ugh, Lord Feng, be careful." Yuan Ji's image in the soul transmission looked at him deeply. "I will be at the Void frontline. Everything will be fine. Please, you must come back safely." He did not know if this girl would be so anxious to summon 1,000,000 troops and rush here if he told her that he was ready to set off with the mentality of blowing up the entire Void. In the past 20 days, the people on the 3 sides had returned to silence, and there was no large-scale movement. It was estimated that they were gathering forces in secret to prepare for everyone to go to the mysterious place. It could be felt that the atmosphere on the 3 sides was very tense. In this tense atmosphere they were completely relaxed. They had found a possible destination, and the arrangements had been completed very quickly. All that was left was to wait for time. As for going to explore in advance, they wanted to, but at this time, they would not do something that might cause accidents and misunderstandings. They would wait patiently for a period of time without panicking or being in a hurry. After relaxing, time passed faster. Gu Zhongming and Ning Fei, a pair of friends, ran out every day as if they were collecting information, and seemed to have found something fun by the way. The remaining 8 of them wandered around several profound heaven-sacred cities. At this time, they clearly knew that there were 7 profound heaven-sacred cities. The general framework of each city was the same, but the internal furnishings were completely different. If they were matched with the scenery of spring, summer, autumn, and winter, these 7 cities should look even better. It would be even better if there was no aura of war on the front line. "Found it, Lord Feng, Lord Hui. Come here quickly." Ning Fei's urgent call pulled them out of their state of shopping. When they found the location of the 2 of them, they were stunned. It happened to be the profound heaven-sacred city they were in at this time. Without hesitation, they opened the transmission gate and rushed over. After appearing beside Gu Zhongming and Ning Fei, they first looked around. They were standing on a two-story building, and below them was a very lively street. However, as soon as they came out, they saw the people coming and going on the street making frightened sounds and scattering in all directions. It was the same scene they saw some time ago. Yun Nuoshing and the others immediately moved their gazes to the place where the commotion came from. As expected, they saw the white light figure. When they saw it again, everyone had a strange expression. "You've been chasing it all this time?" Yun Nuoshing couldn't help but ask. Yes, we've been chasing it for a long time. We've been wandering around the 7 sacred cities. This time we finally bumped into it. Ning Fei grinned. "It's something fun, right?" Gu Zhongming saw Mr. Feng and the others looking at him. He covered his face and looked to the side. "He was the one who dragged me. I don't know why he's chasing it. It's fun." Everyone. Chasing a strange thing for more than 10 days, this child was either seriously ill or had a deeper meaning. They hoped that it was the latter. This time, they observed the white silhouette again and sensed the energy mixed with weak willpower that it released. Everyone could hear the sound of energy mixed with it. After distinguishing it a few times, they confirmed that it was indeed the words, "Leave this place." Siyu pulled Little Star's hand and whispered, "It says those words to the people in this starry sky day and night. Doesn't it feel tired?" Yun Nuoshing. He thought of a dozen responses, but in the end, he didn't answer this girl. Anyway, she would turn her attention back to him in a while. "Little Star, what do you think will happen if we use energy to respond to it?" Yun Nuoshing. This girl still hasn't turned her attention. Seeing that Siyu was about to gather energy to respond, he was stunned for a moment. He used his fastest reaction to stop her energy and pinched her pretty face with both hands. "Don't mess around. It will explode if you touch it. Have you forgotten?" Siyu pouted and whispered, "But it will only counterattack if we attack it. It shouldn't be a problem if we use energy to respond." "I'll do it." No. "I'll do it. I have experience." Yun Nuoshing was sweating profusely. After listening to their conversation, Hui and the others were also sweating profusely. They all prayed in their hearts. Blue Phoenix, Shuang, and Sui Qing were already gathering energy to save this place. Yun Nuoshing took a light breath. He spread his consciousness and energy stealthily across this distance and carefully touched it. After a while, he felt that it was safe and sound. Then, he took a step further and touched it with his consciousness and energy. He thought for a moment and began to transmit his words. "Leave this place. Where are you going?" All of a sudden, the space fell silent, and the strange aura it released disappeared. The sudden change made them ready to deal with any emergencies, but unexpectedly, it didn't attack them. After a few seconds, the strange aura spread out again, and this time, it was even stronger. But this time, there was a change in the message it conveyed. "Leave. Can't leave. Can't leave. Door. Close the door. Quickly close the door. Go find. Close the door." The sudden change of words seemed to be a response to his question, which made them all stunned. Everyone looked at him and nodded. He also took a deep breath and continued to respond to her words. "Go find what? What door is close the door referring to? Where is here referring to?" "Here. Leave this place. Go find. They. Close the door." It's impossible to communicate normally at all. Yun Nuoshing scratched his head and spread his hands at everyone. Just as he was about to continue to try to communicate, the white figure suddenly lit up with a dazzling light. The energy gathered. This movement and this aura made everyone's expression change dramatically. The people on the street were also stunned. Just as the group of people was about to do emergency rescue, the white figure suddenly turned into countless energy particles and suddenly exploded. A wind of energy was instantly blown hundreds or thousands of meters away, spreading countless light particles into the profound heaven-sacred city and attracting the attention of countless people. The expected energy explosion didn't happen, which made them feel relieved. Yun Nuoshing waved his hand and condensed the light particles that were close to them in his palm. Just as he was about to try to do something, the light particles quickly dimmed and disappeared in less than 10 seconds. We looked at him for a while and couldn't help but ask, "What did you just say to make it explode?" "Why am I the one who made it explode?" "Well, maybe I did make it explode, but I just followed its words and asked it. I didn't say anything unnecessary." Yun Nuoshing tilted his head and looked around. Seeing that everyone was looking at him with a blank expression, he could only scratch his head and shrug. "Forget it, let's not care about it anymore. We can't care about it even if we want to." Hui spread his hands and looked at the light particles that were floating in the sky above the profound heaven-sacred city. He let out a sigh and said, "Unless it can condense again." The specks of light floating in the profound heaven-sacred city attracted the attention of everyone in the city. Aside from the people who had witnessed the scene, the others would only know what had happened after a while. As for whether something else would happen after that, they couldn't say for sure. Perhaps something else would happen after they came out of the mysterious area. Perhaps something else would happen after that. Perhaps 20 days passed in the blink of an eye. At the bottom of the void, a huge beam of light fell upon the place that had been silent for countless years. As the light dispersed, thousands of figures appeared from within. Everyone looked around for a moment and stood in formation, gathering energy to guard against any sudden incidents. We really reached the bottom of the void. It's easy to drill through the void now. Below is the land of nothingness. After Yun Nuoshing came out, he looked around. It was silent and pitch black. Only the light released by the thousands of people was the only thing in this place. They hadn't seen such a clean scene in the void for a long time. Their impression of the void was only left with scenes of being buried and covered by endless energy. The young female sector master of the heaven mystic world looked around and fixed her gaze in front of her. She whispered softly, "Prepare to receive the guests." Yun Nuoshing had already noticed the energy fluctuations in the void in advance and turned his gaze over. When he saw the distortion in the void, he subconsciously raised his hand. Seeing this, the little angel hurriedly pressed down his sinful right hand and used her wings to wrap around his upper body. She shook her head vigorously at him and said, "No, you can't." Subconsciously. Yun Nuoshing laughed dryly. He had almost subconsciously buried the people opposite him into the void. When they were jumping through the void, suddenly, 2 huge portals appeared in the distorted void. Figures with vast auras walked out of them and occupied this part of the void. The people from the 3 sides stood in clear positions. They looked at each other and were vigilant of both sides with surging energy. The 8-foot man looked at the primordial world with his arms crossed and suddenly sneered. "The primordial world's supremacy is really ostentatious. Do you want to make the last appearance in such an occasion?" A cold voice came from the primordial world's side. It seemed to be the primordial beginning heavenly God that they had faced for the first time. "My supremacy has important matters to attend to, so he won't be coming personally. He will only watch from the primordial world." Huey's gaze swept across the Chongyuan world and Saint Spirit world. "There are 2 people I know. After so many years, they have also entered the primordial beginning realm." Yun Nuoshing glanced at him and followed his gaze. "How's your relationship?" "Oh, if there's a need, just fight. It's not a big deal. They just met and had a meeting. Not to mention these 2 people, our family's relationship with the Chongyuan world and Saint Spirit world is not bad. We don't have much interaction. Feng, other than the meeting you had with people from the 2 worlds in the Guardian Temple, you haven't seen people from the other 2 worlds, right?" Yun Nuoshing tugged at her hair and pondered for a while. "I don't think so." While they were talking, a white energy vortex suddenly appeared silently in the void. It appeared silently like a ghost. When they noticed it, it had expanded to a radius of 10,000 miles. It appeared directly in front of them without any sound or movement. It slowly rotated in front of them, as if it was going to suck the void into the vortex. The newcomers couldn't help but be surprised when they saw this scene. They whispered in the queue. Yun Nuoshing and the others also looked at it with interest for a while. In the end, they couldn't see anything. The existence of this thing really seemed to be illusory. They couldn't see any characteristics. They could only feel that it was gathering the power of the void and space at a very slow speed. It was as if a hole had accidentally opened at the bottom of the lake and formed a vortex. As the vortex was too small, it couldn't even affect the surface of the lake. Indeed, they had such a feeling. In this case, they were preparing to go to the bottom of the lake. There might be a hole there, or they didn't know where it was. Forget it, let's not care about these details. Okay, we have nothing to say. Since we have already arranged people, let's go in. I hope to see you come out alive after 15 years. Haha. The primordial god of the primordial world waved his hand. Thousands of people in the origin realm who came here walked forward. The girl glanced at him and turned around indifferently. She looked at the crowd and nodded slightly. Be careful on this trip. Don't be impatient. Have a safe journey. Her gaze seemed to have swept over him twice, which made Yun Nuoshing's face twitch. She couldn't help but roll her eyes at her. When the two sides set off, the Changyuan world and the Saint Spirit world also sent people out. The whirlpool with a radius of 10,000 miles could accommodate more than 10,000 people from the three sides, so it was more than enough. The people from the three sides looked at each other and showed their teeth as if they were demonstrating. After a while, they all snorted coldly and walked into the white whirlpool together. It was also when the army entered the whirlpool that vague figures appeared behind or beside some of the teams like ghosts. They were so low-key that it was difficult to attract anyone's attention. The dozens of people in the primordial realm standing outside the whirlpool didn't notice this scene. They only watched everyone enter the white whirlpool and waited for a while until it slowly closed. Only then did they turn around and leave. During this period, the three sides didn't communicate at all. It was already a good result that they didn't fight on the spot. The people from the Changyuan world and the Saint Spirit world walked the slowest. One of them couldn't help but turn his head to look at the empty void. He suddenly frowned. Strange. I feel like I saw someone? A few people beside him saw him stop and also turned their heads. Who is it? It's not vague. It seems to be that person. It's so strange. I can't see clearly. Maybe I got the wrong person. That person can't appear here. After all, that person doesn't have time to come back to these places. Even if he has time to come back, he will probably come back with thousands of troops. The people beside him saw him suddenly relax after muttering to himself. They were all puzzled. Chapter 1971. Yun Nuoshing locked her eyes on the vortex in front of her. Just as she was about to step into it, she contacted Yuan Ji through her soul. We are ready to go in. Don't be nervous if we lose contact later. By the way, if we really lose contact, it may be about 15 years. I'll leave the void frontline to you. Lord Feng, please be careful. Please come back safely. Yun Nuoshing nodded casually. The moment she stepped into the white vortex, she suddenly exclaimed in her heart. She looked at the people who were quickly disappearing in various places of the vortex. The space behind her suddenly opened up. Chains of order came out of it and rushed towards Siyu, Little Hour and the others. She grabbed Hui and the little angel beside her. The surging origin energy shrouded them. She whispered, "Hold on tight. There's a teleportation." Everyone hurriedly grabbed the chains. Before they could do anything else, a light suddenly flashed in front of them. A strong white light rushed into their eyes, blinding them. A huge aura of the void and space covered them at the same time. They only had time to mentally prepare themselves that they were about to be teleported. Then, a strange feeling suddenly came over them. The teleportation was over. The light lasted for a while before it slowly dissipated. The group quickly opened their eyes and looked around vigilantly. They said in unison, "Where is this? Damn, it's so barren. It's so uncomfortable. It's so uncomfortable. Energy. Give me energy. The energy is thin. Little star, it's so uncomfortable." Well, it was not very neat. And this place was as they said. It was really barren. The energy was barren, and so was the environment. Although they would not be affected by the energy in the outside world, there was still some discomfort in their senses. It was like a group of people who did not need to breathe or even have a heartbeat would habitually breathe and let the light in their chests flutter. It was an action and feeling engraved in their consciousness. The surroundings were silent, and the sky was blocked by dark clouds, leaving only a dim light spreading between heaven and earth. They stood on an ordinary, barren mountain without any bright spots. Looking around, they found that this should be a hilly plain, with uneven terrain all around. The environment was as barren as mentioned earlier, with yellow soil everywhere. The withered trees standing on the ground were like solidified soldier statues standing on the yellow sand, with not even a single leaf left. The entire land was devoid of greenery, and it was truly a wilderness. The energy concentration was also maintained at an extremely low level, and with a single breath, one would be worried that one would accidentally drain the little energy left in this place. There were no ghosts around. There were only the 10 of them. The others were scattered somewhere. Siyu sniffled. After a moment, she cried out in surprise and threw herself into Little Star's arms. He was stunned. He subconsciously hugged her and looked around nervously. "What's wrong? What's wrong?" The little girl was embarrassed. She snuggled in his arms and said softly, "The energy is so thin. It's more comfortable to hug you." Yun Nuashing. Am I a large energy source? Everyone nodded. Xiao Shi quickly added, "The largest energy source in the void of order." Sui Qing also said, "The original light shines on this body. The void is indestructible and the energy is infinite." You said it. The original light is a special case. Let's not talk about it first. Let's talk about myself. Yun Nuashing coughed and said quickly, "I just have a little more energy than all of you. You bunch of Yuanshi. It's already strange that all of us who are close to the peak of Yuanshi can't have as much energy as you. Count the world light orbs you have. Do you dare to tell me how many world light orbs you have in your spiritual world, soul-dimensional space, spiritual world, and space of consciousness?" Hui stared at him with his hands on his hips and said loudly, "Look at the energy you're releasing. In this place where the energy is thin, even the origin mark can't contain the energy you're accidentally releasing." "But I really don't have that many world light orbs with me." Yun Nuashing grimaced. "There are only about 10,000 of them." Everyone. This person's mental illness was getting worse. He brought an entire world group with him. They didn't know what his soul was made of, but it could actually withstand the weight of 10,000 world light orbs. If they were in his shoes, they could only withstand 100 world light orbs. There are 70 to 80 times this amount in the sea of energy. I should have brought some of them here. Those world light orbs are a little more advanced. Everyone. There was no bottom line when it came to mental illness. What's more, he liked to break through the bottom line and become mentally ill at the same time. This was very observant. Shuang looked at Siyu, who was huddled in Little Star's arms. She also went over and huddled behind him. She pressed her hands on his shoulders and sniffed his body. She took a deep breath and nodded. Her pretty face was full of joy. "Rich energy. He's alive. Blue Phoenix, come here." Yun Nuashing. Shuang, you've been led astray." Half a minute later, Yun Nuashing was surrounded by 4 girls. He looked around and felt a little uncomfortable. These girls were just messing around under Cu's lead. His energy had spread about 10 feet away. Well, it seemed that his energy was really a little frightening. The energy in this place was also a little too thin. He didn't need to come over, but they just liked to mess with him. Forget it, let them be. According to the theory that this land is a world light orb, we are now in the wilderness of space, right? And it's a very early wilderness. We looked up at the slightly dark clouds in the sky and frowned slightly. But the land is a world light orb. I really didn't think of this before. We have encountered a similar situation. Yun Nuoshing patted the long hair of Cu, who was nestled in his arms, and said, "When we went to attack the Divine Shadow Clan, didn't we split up? Cu, Qinghuang, and I met up in a world similar to this one." Blue Phoenix reminded, the spirit-gathering continent. That place was an experimental world created by the former Divine Shadow Clan. Its existence was probably carefully adjusted. In the entire starry sky, there was only one continent and countless archipelagos surrounding the continent. The sun, the moon, and the stars really existed, but there was no such thing as a galaxy. In short, the stars were like decorations hanging high in the sky, used to decorate the entire continent. The switching between day and night was completely changed by the rules. Well, at that time the situation was urgent, so we did not explore too deeply. We only knew part of the situation, but we did not know more details. This place. Yun Nuoshing looked around, and moved the wings wrapped around him by the little angel, a little. Since it was said that it was a sealed little world, it might be a broken little world. Let's wait until we see the details before we talk about it. It's good that we are alone. This way we can act as we want. It's not worth holding back and being restrained. We tried to contact the Void Frontline. After trying for a while, he helplessly shook his hand and turned to Maple. You were right. The connection between the outside and the Void Frontline has been cut off. We can't contact the Void Frontline. We don't know if something will happen if we stay here for 15 years. Yun Nuoshing sighed in distress. Although she knew that the underworld would not be just right in 15 years. No, this was a matter of probability. It was not just a matter of probability, but also a matter of psychology. She was afraid that something would happen in these 15 years. By the time they got out, the Void of Order would have been charred, and the underworld would have killed their way to the celestial realm. Then everyone looked at each other and grimaced. Their faces were full of worry. He sighed. Forget it. Let's not think about that for now. If there's an emergency, we should be able to blast through this place and kill our way out. But we can't judge when it's an emergency. Hui shrugged and waved his hand. He led the way down the barren mountain. Forget it. Let's finish this as soon as possible and see what we can do when the time comes. Yun Nuoshing stared at him. Do you know where we're going? Hui froze. He maintained his original posture and walked back. He looked at him with an embarrassed smile, then turned to Shuang, who was lying on his back. Shuang, where are we going? I don't know. Shuang shook her head and knocked her head against Little Star's neck twice. I can feel it. It's completely gone. Ning Fei heard this and grimaced. Did we go to the wrong place? God knows. Yun Nuoshing rolled her eyes and patted Cu, who was in her arms. She moved her body so that the girls would let go of him. She then took out the rhythm of light and placed it on the ground. Anyway, let's just treat this place as the destination we're looking for. It's just that the destination is as big as an entire world of light. It's not surprising that it's hidden in a corner. We're about to set off now. The first step is very important. With a clang, the rhythm of light fell to the ground. The hilt was pointed forward. Yun Nuoshing waved her hand and pointed forward. She shouted with a powerful aura, "Go this way!" Everyone was speechless. When will he change this bad habit of randomly pointing the way? Anyway, we don't have a direction now. Yun Nuoshing put one hand on her waist and swung her long hair. She shouted through the soul transmission, "Little Qing, point the way." Master Feng, we didn't find anything here. Please wait a little longer. Look. Yun Nuoshing shrugged at everyone who looked troubled. She replied to I Ching, "It's fine. I'm not rushing you. Take your time. There's no rush. Remember to save your strength." Understood. We'll obey the god's orders. Everyone, set up the small temporary creation that we brought earlier. Set it up. Get excited. Get high. Everyone in the soul was extremely excited and responded in a mess. Hearing this, Yun Nuoshing's eyes widened and he was dumbfounded. He hurriedly grabbed I Ching, who was about to leave. "Wait a minute, what is that little temporary creation you guys were talking about?" "Ah, that. It's something that the logistics people made during the 20 years that you were in hibernation." I Ching was a little confused. "Didn't Master Hui tell you?" "Oh, after you came out, everyone went for the baptism, so they forgot about it." Yun Nuoshing glanced to the side. With Hui at the center, everyone turned away with a whoosh to avoid his gaze. He rolled his eyes hard. These forgetful fellows. As the name suggests, the small temporary creation uses a part of the laws, order, and energy of the creation to form a structural core. It can be unfolded elsewhere into a small creation that can be used for about 3 days. It retains all the functions of the creation, and because it's quite convenient to prepare the core, as long as you bring enough, you can effectively solve the problem of the Void Patrol team not being able to create a new generation of energy tower by hand. It avoids the awkwardness of having to temporarily use the previous generation of energy tower after it's used up. In other words, you don't have to worry about insufficient firepower. The only problem is that because it's a small creation space, the speed at which the energy towers are created is slightly slower. It's only about half to 3/4 of the speed of the creation space itself. Moreover, it's also temporary and needs to be replaced after being used. Fortunately, the structural cores of the small creation space can be prepared very easily. We brought enough over so Lord Feng doesn't have to worry. I Ching's quick explanation made Yun Nuoshing to indicate that she understood. Good stuff. Yes. It's even better if it's not temporary. I Ching smiled brightly like a child who was a dozen eras old. Then we'll go prepare some things. Lord Feng, please wait for our good news. Well, although it sounded as if they had left everything to little Qing, they wouldn't just stand there and wait. There were 2 sources of incidents on their side, and something might happen if they went out for a stroll. In the end, they walked in the direction where the rhythm of light fell. There was only wilderness along the way, and it was a barren land where birds didn't lay eggs. Even the wind that brushed against their faces carried a hint of desolation. They had to cross a very long distance before they gradually sensed traces of life. However, it didn't seem to be humans but some very large, strange lifeforms. Feng, look. A primeval stage lifeform. Hui tugged at Feng's arm and looked up at the behemoth before them, his handsome face a little dull. I see it. But what's going on here? Yun Nuoshing's face twitched a few times. This was still a barren land with barren hills and unruly rivers. In front of them to their right, mountains of thousands of feet and tens of thousands of feet high formed a huge mountain range that stretched as far as the eye could see. After crossing this mountain range, there was a pitch-black, huge humanoid object that looked like an enlarged version of the white light figure. It was even thrown into an ink pool and dyed black. The black aura on its body kept drifting like a haze. It scattered and condensed into a ball and fell to the ground. The thick layer of haze could even distort light, and they could clearly see the obvious signs of distortion in the space around the haze. That towering mountain wasn't even as high as its knees, and looking past it, it could see that there were even more of these strange creatures that were as black as dregs in the distance. There were as many as a nest, And not only were there humanoid creatures, there were also creatures that looked similar to beasts, and there were also strange-looking magical beasts. Speaking of which, could these creatures even be called living creatures? There's a breath of life. It's obviously a type of life form, but the breath is abnormal. Little Hour said softly, I can't detect the existence of any thinking organ. It's suspected to be a life form without intelligence. Its energy and breath belong to order, but its order is relatively low. Its type belongs to the negative attribute. In terms of structure, it should be a half-energy, half-material life form. Its structure is quite chaotic, and it's in an amorphous state. If necessary, it may be able to change its form at any time. The energy of the negative attribute of order did not mean that the negative attribute of order was chaos. It was different. Just like the dark element that appeared in the later era, the dark element also belonged to the negative attribute of order, and also belonged to the order. It had nothing to do with chaos. As for the so-called difference between negative and positive attribute, well, actually, there wasn't much to pay attention to. There was a boundary, and the difference in order between these types of energy and objects belonged to the positive or negative category. The further away from this boundary, the higher the positive or negative category would be. If one had to explain it, for the life forms of order, the positive or negative category would be easier to grasp, while the negative category would be slightly more difficult. However, both types of energy and objects belong to order to chaos. The so-called order and darkness in the primordial age were, in fact, the positive and negative in the primordial age. This was a statement that was limited to order. After all, in the primordial age, even the true order and chaos had almost disappeared. Who would still know what the true order was? Drawing a picture, there was a vertical axis and a horizontal axis. The left side of the vertical axis was defined as order. The left side of the horizontal axis was positive and the left side was negative. However, no matter how positive or negative they were still order. The right side of the vertical axis was chaos. In other words, the horizontal axis was the boundary between order and chaos. The closer one was to the vertical axis, the lower the level of order and chaos. This was what it meant when the heavenly god of origin and the chaos concept body stood at the leftmost end of the horizontal axis and the rightmost end of the horizontal axis. Positive, negative, and so on. These were the categories that only order had. Chaos, it was chaos. If one had to say that negative and chaos had some similarities in nature, it would be that they both liked to go crazy. But it's a little ridiculous for such a life form to appear in this place. Moreover, it's a life form that has just ascended to the primeval stage. At first glance, I thought it was the abyss death mist or chaos spawn. We looked at the nest of black things for a while, then turned around and pointed to the distance. If we keep walking in this direction, we will see a city. Let's go there and take a look. Maybe we can find out about these black things as well as about this world. Then let's go. Yun Nuashing nodded, and just as he was about to take the lead to walk over, the sky suddenly darkened a lot, causing the group of them to subconsciously raise their heads, and then they saw a large humanoid figure looking down at them, staring at them for a while, without saying a word. He suddenly raised his mountain-like black hand and slapped it down on them. The vast and mighty energy contained within turned into a storm, and before it even got close, it left a huge palm print on the ground, causing an earthquake of unknown magnitude, and trembling like noodles being shaken. A streak of purplish-black sword light erupted from below, shooting into the sky. It cleaved the giant in half along with its attack and energy. The giant's body quickly collapsed after being destroyed by the Netherruin sword's energy. It exploded into a cloud of pitch-black smoke and drifted into the sky, quickly disappearing. Yun Nuashing tidied her messy hair and said, "The wind is really strong." Feng Qinghuang put away her sword and held Little Star's hand. She said, "The attack is so strong. It seems to have found us by following our auras. We have concealed our auras and are still quite a distance away." As she spoke, she was slightly stunned. She reacted at the same time as everyone else and looked at the observer. The observer was stunned. He pointed at himself and said, "Me? Is it because of me? Who else could it be other than you? Look at the energy overflowing from your body. The energy in this place has recovered to a certain level, but you are still releasing energy." Hui grimaced and said, "You are the largest energy source in the void." Yun Nuoshing was speechless. Another strange title. It'll be fine once we return to a place where the energy is normal. I'm doing something right now, so it's a little loud. You know, the energy outside is a little thin, so. He couldn't help but laugh dryly, and tried his best to explain himself. But seeing how everyone rolled their eyes and stuck out their tongues, he knew that his explanation was completely useless. "See, you thought of something." She suddenly turned to Little Star and said, "Are there many creatures in the Yuanshi state in this world?" "No." "Are you sure?" Huey's eyes widened. "Where did this idea come from?" "Because you see, when we scanned the place with our senses, we sensed a lot of human beings. If there are so many of them, and they are gathered not too far away from here, those coal beings will follow Little Star's scent and find the town sooner or later. They are so aggressive. If it is just an ordinary town, it will be gone with a step. That is to say, there should be some human beings who can match these strange beings, right?" Siyu shook Little Star's hand and said, "It is easy to think that there are Yuanshi state beings here. Plus, there are a lot of coal beings, so there should be a lot of Yuanshi state beings on the human side. Well, that should be it." Indeed, the city was not too far away from the nest of strange beings. For Yuanshi state beings, this distance was almost negligible. And the city was apparently safe and sound, so it should be equipped with the power to resist these strange beings. Unless these coal beings did not have a large sensing range and did not wander around. Oh, it was hard to say. After all, they were brainless. Speaking of which, this lass had given these strange creatures a name so quickly. Life of Coal. Looking at the extent of their appearance, it was indeed fitting for this name. Compared to those blobs of ink that left behind a trail of smoke wherever they went, the former was a huge source of smog that emitted a large amount of smog. With just one look, one could tell that it was a heavy pollution that could smear the sky with layers of black smog. The latter was at most, a simple smoky makeup, although they could pollute the entire world of order with just a little bit of effort. In short, the idea that there are a lot of Yuanshi state beings in this world had taken root in their minds. On the way to the city, they were already calculating the combat power of this world. They did not use teleportation on the way because they wanted to take a look at the wilderness. But the more they looked, the weirder the idea in their minds became. On the way to the city, they had seen hundreds of nests of these dark-looking things. There were probably millions of them. Their size ranged from tens of thousands of feet to thousands of miles. They were like moving mountains. The highest level of coal beings that they had seen so far was only comparable to the first sky of Yuanshi state. It was an unidentified object flying in the sky. The smog was so heavy that they could not see what it was. They only felt that it was very big, like a floating city in the sky. They seriously suspected that the dark clouds in the sky that had not dissipated and stretched for hundreds of thousands of light years were their masterpiece. When they were still several 100,000 kilometers away from the city, they looked at the horizon and saw a huge energy barrier that stood between the heavens and the earth. It was a behemoth that could encompass many planets. It was also from their current distance that those creatures that were as black as dregs all stopped in their tracks, not daring to come any closer. They froze in place like those withered trees on the ground. Probably because they can't get close. Look at them carefully. Hui slowed down his flying speed, turned around and continued to move forward. He looked at the big blob beside him and said, "They look like they want to go over but don't dare to. Stop here." The expulsion effect of the barrier? Yun Nuoshing looked at the big blob that was only a few dozen meters away from them. Its head was more than 100 times bigger than all of them combined. Now that they had come to the area where the energy had returned to normal, he had concealed his presence. Passing by at such a close distance would not attract the attention of the creatures. Everyone looked at the huge barrier that was hundreds of thousands of miles in diameter and the huge city that was about the same size inside. Then they looked at the circle of coal creatures that had stopped in front of them. They were all confused. The coal creatures that had stopped here had formed a layer, standing still like statues. There was also a nest of coal creatures behind this layer, but the further they went, the fewer there were. The rest basically did not come over. It was as if something had drawn a distance, and the coal creatures within this distance would swarm in this position. Those outside the area would return to the wilderness to wander. Yes, they would wander like wandering ghosts, aimlessly walking around with earth-shaking steps. The huge barrier that stood between heaven and earth was as transparent as water ripples. A circle of ripples would gently spread from the top to the entire barrier every few seconds. When it was not rippling, it was impossible to see the energy barrier in the space. They just observed for a while, and carefully stepped into the barrier. When they found that there was no rejection or abnormality, they felt relieved and rushed all the way to the city gate. But it was a little awkward that the gate facing the wilderness was closed. They had to circle around and enter the city from another direction. Huh? They came out of the chaotic demon wilderness? This place was still using the common language of the myriad races, so it was a little more convenient. However, when the middle-aged soldier at the city gate opened his mouth and spoke in a tone that could scare him to death, coupled with the terrified expression on his face, it really stunned the group of people. In their hearts, they unanimously labeled this so-called chaotic devil wilderness as a troublesome place. The guard standing outside the gate was a middle-aged soldier at high reciprocity. In front of him stood a group of people who did not look right, were not simple, and looked very strange from head to toe. In particular, when he heard them say that they had just crawled out of the chaotic demon wilderness and how clean they were, he immediately became a little confused as to whether they were making a joke out of him or just spouting nonsense. He looked at the group of people in front of him suspiciously for a while. He stroked his thick beard and frowned, as if he did not plan on delving into it. With a sigh, he waved his hand, "Go in, go in." Even the chaotic demon wilderness can be treated as a joke these days? Yun Nuoshing's group laughed dryly as they slipped into the city. They did not reply. It seemed like the barren land was a terrifying place in the eyes of the locals, such that no one would believe them if they said they had anything to do with it. Even if they tried to argue, it would be useless. They might even be treated as a joke. "Hey!" The middle-aged soldier suddenly called out to them, startling them. They all turned their heads, only to see him with his spear on his shoulder. He stared at them with narrowed eyes and said in a warning tone, "Although I don't know where you came from, since you mentioned the chaotic demon wilderness, I still have to remind you. Don't think that you can go in there just because you've made some achievements at a young age. Who knows how many people have foolishly hung in there with this mentality in the long history of the chaotic demon wilderness. Even their bones can't be found. Seriously, that's not a good place. Why would so many idiots run in there? I don't understand. We will pay attention. Thank you for the reminder." We replied to the warning with a dazzling smile. The group of people also replied before continuing into the city. There was a huge energy ring in the sky above the city. It was filled with all kinds of mysterious runes and runes that looked very powerful. If one looked carefully, they would notice that it had the same energy aura as the energy barrier that supported the heaven and earth, and the source of both of them seemed to be the pillar in the center of the city. To be precise, it's the energy core inlaid on the pillar. Sui Qing raised her eyes and looked at the top of the pillar, directing everyone to look there. It was a huge white pillar that looked like an all inside and all. There were more than a dozen layers from top to bottom. It was a huge white pillar that was tens of thousands of miles tall. The top of it was inlaid with a cube-shaped energy crystal. It could be felt that it had merged with the pillar. The two worked together to steadily release energy and constantly replenish energy from the heaven and earth. Together, they maintained this huge and eternal energy barrier. This structure was quite similar to the energy tower they used. The tower body and the energy core each had their own uses. The combination of the two could better play a role. Well, in short, we have successfully entered the city. Now, Hui just raised his hand, and Gu Zhongming and Ning Fei, this pair of friends, rushed out. Then let's go and collect information first. These two young men are quite enthusiastic. Hui scratched his head and turned to look at everyone. Then let's walk around casually first. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.